Tonight, one of these 8 stories may expose the lie that has been keeping you awake. The lie that you must escape your fear before you can feel safe. The lie that one more achievement, one more relationship, or one more purchase will finally make the emptiness disappear. The lie that your life must become less complicated before you can begin healing. And perhaps the most painful lie of all, that what you have done, lost, or failed to become has already decided who you will be forever. If your body is tired but your mind refuses to rest, stay here. You do not need to solve anything tonight. You only need to listen. In the first story, a man sits completely still while every nerve in his body orders him to run. He believes fear will destroy him if he does not escape, but for the first time, he stays long enough to discover something his mind had never allowed him to see. Fear rises. Fear peaks. Fear passes. The second story follows a man who has everything Americans are taught to desire: money, influence, attention, pleasure, and access. Yet when the party ends and the music stops, he discovers that a full life can still feel completely empty. The third man voluntarily enters a place filled with anger and violence. He does not go because he feels no fear. He goes because he refuses to let fear decide where compassion is allowed to exist. Then, 32 brilliant people attempt to explain one of life's deepest truths. The final man offers no argument and no speech. His silence reveals what their words could not. Another man spends his life protecting everything he loves. He builds stronger walls, hires more guards, and prepares for every possible danger. Yet the safer his life appears, the more frightened he becomes. Only when he gives up the demand for certainty does he begin to understand freedom. The sixth man keeps waiting for life to slow down. He will begin tomorrow, after the bills are paid, after the family needs less, after the next emergency is over. But tomorrow keeps moving until almost no time remains. A poor child has nothing valuable to give, so he gathers dirt in his hands and offers it as though it were gold. What is received is not the dirt, it is the heart that held nothing back, and the final man has caused suffering that cannot be undone. He believes pain is the only honest future left for him. He must discover that responsibility is not the same as destroying himself forever. These are not stories about perfect people. They are stories about people standing exactly where many of us are standing tonight. Afraid, exhausted, ashamed, grieving, holding too tightly, waiting too long, trying to outrun something that continues to follow us into every quiet room. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to become fearless before you rest. It does not ask you to erase the past or pretend the pain was necessary. It asks you to stop running for the length of one breath, to notice what is here, to loosen your grip, to let the unanswered questions sit beside you without demanding that they disappear. So lower the lights. Let your body become still. You are about to hear 8 stories about fear, emptiness, compassion, silence, control, delay, generosity, and redemption. One of them may feel as though it was written for the life you are living right now. Story 1. The man who refused to run. The bravest thing Daniel Reed ever did was remain seated while every nerve in his body screamed that he was about to die. He was not trapped inside a burning building. No one was holding a gun to his head. There was no attacker, no explosion, no visible danger. Daniel was sitting alone on a metal bench inside a firefighter training tower in Denver, Colorado, with both hands resting on his knees. His heart was striking his ribs so violently that he could feel every beat in his throat. His lungs refused to take a full breath. His fingers had gone numb. A crushing pressure spread across his chest. The oldest part of his mind delivered one clear command: get out. Daniel did not move. 3 years earlier, he had been the man other people called when they were afraid. For nearly 14 years, he had served as a firefighter. He had entered burning homes, climbed unstable staircases, cut injured drivers from crushed vehicles, and carried strangers through smoke while alarms screamed around him. People had called him fearless. Daniel had never corrected them. Fear had always been there. He had simply known where to put it. Then, on a winter morning, a warehouse roof collapsed during a rescue operation. Daniel made it out. His partner, Marcus Hill, did not. Daniel remembered hearing Marcus call his name through the radio. He remembered turning back. He remembered another firefighter grabbing his coat and pulling him toward the exit. He remembered the sound of the roof coming down. For months afterward, Daniel told everyone that he was doing fine. He attended the funeral. He stood beside Marcus's family. He returned to the firehouse. He cleaned equipment, checked oxygen tanks, and drank coffee with the same men he had worked beside for years. Then the panic began. The first attack came inside a grocery store. A delivery worker dropped a wooden pallet behind him. The sound cracked through the building. Daniel's body reacted before his mind understood what had happened. His heart accelerated. His vision narrowed. The floor seemed to tilt. He abandoned his shopping cart and ran to the parking lot. The moment he reached his truck, the panic began to weaken. That should have reassured him. Instead, it taught his body a dangerous lesson. Running worked. Soon, Daniel was running from more than sudden noises. He stopped attending crowded events. He avoided elevators. He refused to sit where he could not see the nearest exit. He stopped visiting the firehouse because the smell of the equipment made his stomach tighten. He took different roads to avoid passing the warehouse where Marcus had died. When his daughter performed in a school play, Daniel stood in the back of the auditorium near the doors. He told her that he wanted a better view. She was 12 years old. She knew he was lying. Daniel tried everything that seemed reasonable. He exercised until his legs shook. He worked longer hours at the construction company that had hired him after he left the department. He kept the television running late into the night, so silence could not catch him. He swallowed every feeling until he could no longer tell the difference between being calm and being empty. Nothing worked for long. The fear kept returning. It appeared in traffic. It appeared in restaurants. It appeared in the middle of conversations. It appeared at 2 a.m, when Daniel opened his eyes and felt certain that something terrible was already happening. The strange part was that Daniel knew what panic was. He knew the racing heart could not kill him. He knew the pressure in his chest would eventually loosen. He knew the dizziness came from his breathing. He understood every explanation. None of it mattered when the fear arrived. Knowledge lived in his mind. Fear lived somewhere deeper. One afternoon, Daniel met with a counselor who had worked with firefighters, police officers, and military veterans. Daniel described the attacks. He described the exits. He described the roads he no longer drove and the places he no longer entered. The counselor listened without interrupting. Then, she asked a question. "How long do you stay when the panic begins?" Daniel frowned. "I stay until I can leave." "That was not my question." Daniel looked away. She asked again. "How long do you remain with the fear before you escape from it?" Daniel thought about the grocery store, the auditorium, the elevators, the firehouse. "Maybe 30 seconds. The counselor nodded. "Then you have experienced the beginning of panic hundreds of times." Daniel waited. "But you have almost never stayed long enough to experience its ending." The words unsettled him. He wanted to argue. He wanted to explain that leaving was not weakness. It was instinct. It was what the body was designed to do when danger appeared. The counselor agreed. "Your body believes it is saving your life. It feels like I am dying. I believe you. Then why would I stay? Because every time you run, your body thinks the fear was right." Daniel said nothing. "You escape," she continued, "and the panic eventually passes. Your mind gives the credit to the escape. It never learns that the fear would have passed, even if you remained where you were." Daniel understood the words. He hated them. She did not ask him to return to the warehouse. She did not ask him to force himself into a dangerous situation. She asked him to choose a controlled place connected to his fear. A place where he would be physically safe. A place where he could leave if a real emergency occurred, but where he would not leave simply because his body demanded it. Daniel chose the firefighter training tower. It was the building where recruits practice climbing stairs, carrying hoses, searching rooms, and moving through simulated smoke. He had trained there hundreds of times. After Marcus died, Daniel could no longer enter it. The first evening, he stood outside the door for 11 minutes. His hand reached for the handle 3 times. Each time, he pulled it back. He felt foolish. He had once walked into burning structures without knowing whether the floor would hold. Now, he could not open an unlocked door. He almost left. Then he remembered the counselor's words. "You have experienced the beginning hundreds of times." Daniel opened the door. He entered the tower and sat on a metal bench near the first stairwell. Before sitting, he made himself a promise. Whatever position he was in when the fear arrived, he would remain in that position until the fear began to fall. If he was sitting, he would remain seated. If he was standing, he would remain standing. If he was walking, he would stop and hold his ground. He was not promising to feel calm. He was promising not to run. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. Daniel almost felt disappointed. Then, a ventilation system activated somewhere above him. The mechanical sound struck his body like an alarm. His heart surged. His shoulders tightened. The pressure returned to his chest. His mind began building a catastrophe from almost nothing. The tower is not safe. Something is wrong with the air. You are going to pass out. No one will find you. Leave now. Daniel gripped the edge of the bench. His legs prepared to stand. He forced his hands back onto his knees. The fear grew. It moved through him in stages. First came the racing heart. Then the shallow breathing. Then the numbness in his fingers. Then the certainty. That was the worst part. Not the physical sensations. The certainty that they would never stop. Daniel looked at the door. It was less than 20 feet away. He could reach it in seconds. His entire body leaned toward it without moving. He remained seated. The fear climbed higher. Daniel stopped trying to calm himself. He stopped telling himself that everything was fine. Everything did not feel fine. He stopped fighting the sensations and began naming them. Fast heartbeat, tight chest, numb fingers, heat in the face, pressure behind the eyes. He treated each sensation like information arriving from a frightened body, not a command, not a prophecy. Information. The panic reached a point where Daniel believed he could not endure another second. Then another second passed. He was still there. Another followed. Then something changed. The fear did not disappear. It hesitated. The pressure in his chest loosened slightly. His next breath went deeper than the one before it. The numbness began retreating from his fingers. His heart was still beating fast, but it was no longer accelerating. Daniel remained seated. He waited. The panic continued to fall. Not dramatically, not all at once. It left the way floodwater drains after a storm, slowly revealing what had been beneath it the entire time. The bench, the floor, the door, his hands, his breath. Daniel looked at the clock on the wall. 9 minutes had passed. He had expected the panic to continue forever. It had barely lasted 9 minutes. He began to cry, not because he was afraid, not because he missed Marcus, although he did. Daniel cried because for 3 years he had believed fear was a locked room. Now he had watched it open by itself. The following evening, he returned. This time, the panic arrived before he touched the door. He stood with one hand on the handle and remembered his promise. Whatever position he was in, he would stay. Daniel remained standing. The fear rose. It told him that the previous night had been luck. It told him that this attack was different. It told him that something truly dangerous was happening now. He stayed. The panic peaked. It passed. Daniel returned the next evening, then the next. Some nights were easier, others were worse. Once, he left too early. He reached his truck, sat behind the steering wheel, and felt the familiar relief. But the relief no longer felt like victory. He knew what it had cost him. The next night, he returned. After several weeks, Daniel climbed to the second level. Later, he climbed to the third. He listened to recorded alarms. He wore an empty oxygen mask. He carried a length of hose up the stairs. Each new step awakened something. Each time, his body demanded escape. Each time, Daniel waited long enough to see the ending. The fear never asked permission before arriving. It came with the same force and the same certainty. But Daniel had changed. He no longer believed everything fear told him. Months later, his daughter had another performance. Daniel entered the school auditorium with her. He felt the old pressure before he reached his seat. His eyes found the exits automatically. His daughter noticed. "You can stand in the back if you need to," she said. Daniel looked at the empty chair in the center of the row. For years, he had arranged his life around the hope that fear would not find him. It had found him anyway. He stepped past the other parents and sat down. When the lights dimmed, his heart began to race. His daughter walked onto the stage. Daniel felt the command rise inside him. "Get out." He placed both hands on his knees. The fear grew. He stayed. His daughter began to speak. The panic reached its highest point. Daniel watched her. His next breath went deeper. The pressure weakened. The room remained full. The doors remained closed. His daughter continued her performance. Daniel was still sitting when she looked into the audience and found him there. Story 2. The night everything stopped working. Ethan Cole had everything a man was supposed to want. And at 3:17 in the morning, he stepped over a room full of sleeping people and realized none of it had ever reached him. At 32, Ethan was the only son of a billionaire hotel developer in New York City. His name opened private doors. His credit card had no practical limit. He owned apartments he rarely visited, cars he barely drove, and watches expensive enough to pay off another person's mortgage. People arranged themselves around him. Restaurants found tables that had not existed minutes earlier. Clubs opened side entrances. Assistants removed inconvenience before it reached him. Friends planned their weekends around his availability. Strangers laughed before he finished a joke. Ethan had spent most of his adult life surrounded by people, but very few of them had ever asked him a question they did not already know how he would answer. His father called that success. His mother called it security. His friends called it the life. Ethan called it normal. He had never needed to wonder what he wanted. Someone was always placing the next thing in front of him. A new property, a new trip, a new relationship, a new investment, a new reason not to be alone. When one experience began losing its effect, another arrived before the silence could become noticeable. That had been the design of his life. Keep the calendar full. Keep the music playing. Keep people nearby. Keep the next pleasure close enough that the previous one never has to explain why it was not enough. Ethan was good at living that way. He knew how to turn a dinner into a party and a party into a weekend no one remembered clearly. He knew how to make people feel chosen. He paid attention to what they wanted and gave it to them before they asked. People loved him for his generosity. They did not see that generosity also protected him. As long as Ethan was giving everyone something, no one asked what he needed. He did not know how to answer that question. On the night his life cracked open, Ethan hosted a celebration in the penthouse of one of his family's hotels. The company had completed a major acquisition. His father had sent a message saying he was proud. Investors raised glasses to Ethan's future. A famous musician performed for fewer than 200 guests. People filmed themselves being happy. Ethan moved through the crowd with a drink in his hand and the correct expression on his face. He shook hands. He accepted congratulations. He smiled for photographs. Every few minutes, someone leaned close and told him he had built something extraordinary. Ethan thanked them. He did not tell them that he had not built it. He had inherited a position inside a machine that had been moving before he was born. He had made decisions. Some had been intelligent. Some had been lucky. None had answered the question that had begun appearing in him months earlier. What is all of this for? At first, the question had been quiet. It appeared while he was waiting for an elevator. It appeared after a meeting ended. It appeared when someone he barely knew told him that they admired his life. Ethan treated it like an unwanted notification. He dismissed it. The question returned. He traveled more. He dated someone new. He bought a vintage sports car. He joined a private club with a waiting list, several years long. The question followed him through every door. What is all of this for? The party continued until after 2 in the morning. By then, Ethan had stopped drinking. He stood among his guests and felt completely sober. That frightened him more than intoxication ever had. He watched people dancing. He watched them shouting over music. He watched couples touching each other while looking across the room for someone more important. He watched men discuss investments with the urgency of surgeons, and women take photographs they reviewed before the moment had ended. Nothing about it was unusual. Ethan had been in rooms like this for years. The difference was that he could suddenly see the machinery. Every person was reaching for something: approval, attention, desire, status, relief. Everyone wanted the next moment to confirm that the current one mattered. Ethan recognized himself in all of them. He left the room without saying goodbye. No one noticed. He went upstairs to the private residence reserved for his family. He removed his jacket, placed his phone on a table, and sat on the edge of the bed. The music continued below him. He could feel the bass through the floor. Ethan closed his eyes. The question returned. What is all of this for? He opened his eyes. He turned on the television. He muted it. He checked his phone. There were hundreds of messages. Congratulations. Photographs. Invitations. A woman he had been seeing asked where he had gone. His father had sent another message. You made us proud tonight. Ethan read it 3 times. He wanted the words to enter him. They did not. He lay down without changing clothes. At 3:17 in the morning, he woke suddenly. The music had stopped. The silence struck him with physical force. For several seconds, Ethan did not know where he was. Then he heard someone laughing weakly below. A glass broke. A door closed. He stood and returned to the penthouse. The party was over, but the people had not all left. Some were asleep on couches. Some were lying on the floor. One man was sitting against a wall with his mouth open and his head tilted backward. A woman in an expensive dress was sleeping beside a table covered in spilled alcohol. A musician who had performed hours earlier was curled beneath a coat. Phones, shoes, glasses, bottles, and flowers were scattered everywhere. Ethan stopped. The same people had looked beautiful hours earlier. They had seemed powerful, desirable, untouchable. Now, without music and movement, the room looked honest. The charm had disappeared. The bodies had not changed. The light had not revealed anything new. What changed was Ethan's ability to continue pretending. He saw exhaustion disguised as celebration. He saw loneliness crowded into a room. He saw people using each other as protection from themselves. Then he saw his own reflection in the dark window. He looked like someone who had arrived late to his own life. A thought entered him with terrifying clarity. I could live like this for another 40 years. The idea was not comforting. It was unbearable. Ethan felt something break inside his chest. He did not know whether it was grief, fear, or anger. He only knew that he could no longer remain in the room. He walked toward the elevator. Then he stopped. The elevator required a private access card. His card was in the bedroom upstairs. For the first time in years, Ethan did not solve the inconvenience. He found the emergency staircase and began walking down. The hotel had 68 floors. Ethan descended all of them. He passed kitchens, offices, ballrooms, maintenance areas, and service corridors he had never seen. Employees looked at him with surprise. Some recognized him, some did not. One custodian asked whether he needed help. Ethan almost laughed. The question was too large. No, he said. Then, after several steps, he turned back. Yes. The custodian waited. Ethan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I do not know, he finally said. The custodian nodded. as though this were a complete answer. Ethan continued down. By the time he reached the lobby, his shirt was damp with sweat. The night manager approached him. "Sir, should I call a car?" Ethan looked through the glass doors. "No." "Do you need security?" "No." "Where are you going?" Ethan had no answer. He walked outside. For the first time in years, no driver was waiting. No assistant had arranged the next destination. No one was holding a door open. Ethan began walking. He crossed several blocks without direction. His phone remained upstairs. He had no wallet. He had no coat. He had left the hotel carrying nothing. This should have made him feel vulnerable. Instead, something in him became quieter. The city continued around him. Delivery workers moved boxes. Nurses returned home from night shifts. Restaurant employees smoked near back doors. A man washed the sidewalk in front of a grocery store. People were living lives that had nothing to do with Ethan Cole. He had forgotten how large the world was when it was not arranged around him. He kept walking until he reached a 24-hour diner near the East River. The sign was old. The tables were nearly empty. A waitress pointed toward a booth. Ethan sat down. She placed a menu in front of him. "What can I get you?" Ethan looked at the menu. He had eaten in restaurants where a single meal cost more than the waitress might earn in a week. He had discussed food with chefs who treated ingredients like rare art. Now he could not decide whether he wanted eggs. "Coffee," he said. The waitress poured it and walked away. Ethan held the cup with both hands. He listened to the people around him. 2 paramedics spoke quietly near the counter. A delivery driver ate alone. An older man read a newspaper. No one looked at Ethan. No one wanted anything from him. No one cared who his father was. He felt relief. Then he felt ashamed of the relief. A man entered the diner and sat several booths away. He was in his late 60s, wearing plain clothes and carrying a small canvas bag. He ordered tea. Ethan noticed him because the man did nothing while waiting. He did not check a phone. He did not look around impatiently. He did not fill the silence. He simply sat. Ethan watched him for several minutes. The man eventually looked over. Their eyes met. Ethan looked away. A moment later, the man spoke. "You look like you left something behind." Ethan turned toward him. "I did. Was it important?" "I do not know." The man nodded. "That is usually why people have to leave." Ethan should have ignored him. He should have found the comment intrusive. Instead, he asked, "What does that mean?" The man lifted his tea. "It means people rarely walk away from what they understand." Ethan stared at him. "Are you a therapist?" "No." "A minister?" "No." "What are you?" The man smiled. "At this hour, I am someone drinking tea." Ethan almost smiled back. The waitress brought a plate of toast to the man. He broke one piece in half. Ethan looked down at his coffee. "I think something is wrong with me." The man continued eating. Ethan waited for concern, advice, or reassurance. None came. Finally, the man asked, "What feels wrong?" Ethan searched for words. "I have everything." "That is not a feeling." "I know." "What do you feel?" Ethan looked toward the window. "Nothing." The man shook his head. "Nothing does not wake a person in the middle of the night and send him walking across Manhattan without a coat." Ethan felt exposed. "How do you know I did that?" "You are dressed for a celebration. Your shoes are wet. You have no phone. You keep touching your pocket as though something should be there." Ethan placed his hand on the table. The man continued. "You are feeling something. You may simply have spent a long time making sure it never became clear." Ethan leaned back. "Who are you?" "My name is Samuel." "Ethan, I know." Ethan's body tightened. Samuel pointed toward a television mounted above the counter. A business news program was playing without sound. Ethan's photograph appeared beside the headline about the acquisition. The image showed him smiling beside his father. Ethan looked away. Samuel did not appear impressed. That made Ethan trust him. "My entire life is built," Ethan said. Samuel waited. "There is nothing missing." Samuel looked at him carefully. "Then why are you suffering?" The question landed harder than accusation. Ethan had explanations ready. Stress, exhaustion, pressure, alcohol, the acquisition. He did not use any of them. I do not know. Samuel nodded. That is a more honest place to begin. Begin what? Seeing. Ethan felt irritation rise. I can see my life. You can describe your life. What is the difference? A description tells me what you own, where you live, and who knows your name. Seeing tells you what all of that does inside you. Ethan said nothing. Samuel pointed toward the coffee. Did you want that? Yes. Did you choose it? Yes. Did it solve anything? No. That does not mean coffee is bad. Ethan frowned. Samuel continued. Pleasure is not the problem. Comfort is not the problem. Wealth is not the problem. The problem begins when you ask something temporary to perform a permanent job. Ethan looked at the cup. What permanent job? To make you feel whole. The diner became very quiet in Ethan's mind. Samuel spoke without judgment. A good meal can satisfy hunger. Music can entertain you. Money can provide safety and opportunity. Recognition can feel warm for a moment. Each thing has a function. Suffering begins when you demand that one of them tell you who you are. Ethan thought about the party, the photographs, his father's message. You made us proud tonight. He had wanted that sentence to tell him who he was. It had failed. Then what am I supposed to do? Ethan asked. Samuel did not answer immediately. He finished his tea. Then he said, First, stop turning away when the question appears. What question? The one that brought you here. Ethan felt his throat tighten. He had not spoken the question aloud to anyone. What is all of this for? He said. Samuel nodded. That one. Do you know the answer? No. Ethan laughed once, without humor. Then how does this help me? You believe the question is the problem. Is it not? No. The question is the first honest thing that has happened to you in a long time. Ethan looked down. He had treated the question like an intruder. Now Samuel was asking him to treat it like a door. What happens if I do not like the answer? You may not. What if everything changes? It already has. Ethan thought of the room upstairs, the sleeping bodies, the glass on the floor, his reflection in the window. He knew Samuel was right. He could return to the hotel. He could retrieve his phone, shower, sleep, and attend the scheduled meeting at 9. He could apologize for disappearing. He could explain it as exhaustion. Everyone would accept the explanation because everyone around him benefited from his life remaining unchanged. By noon, the machinery would be moving again. The question would become quiet. Ethan could survive that way. That was what terrified him. Samuel reached into his canvas bag and removed a folded flyer. He placed it on the table. The flyer announced a weekly meditation and discussion group at a community center in Queens. Ethan stared at it. You think meditation will fix me? No. Then why give me this? Because you have built a life in which silence is treated like an emergency. Ethan remembered waking after the music stopped. Samuel pushed the flyer closer. You need somewhere you can sit long enough to hear what your life has been trying to tell you. I do not know how to meditate. You know how to sit. That cannot be enough. It is enough for the first morning. Ethan picked up the flyer. The paper was cheap. The printing was slightly crooked. Nothing about it had been designed to impress him. What happens at the group? People sit. People listen. Sometimes people speak. What do they talk about? Suffering, wanting, fear. The ways people confuse what changes with what can be trusted. Ethan looked at Samuel. Are you the teacher? Sometimes. Why did you come here tonight? Samuel folded his hands. My wife died 11 years ago. Ethan waited. For several months, I could not sleep. I came here because it was open. The waitress gave me tea. A stranger spoke to me. I learned that sometimes a person enters the right room before he knows why he is there. Ethan looked around the diner. The paramedics had left. The delivery driver was paying his bill. Morning workers were beginning to arrive. Samuel stood. Ethan looked at the flyer again. What if I come and nothing happens? Samuel placed money beneath his cup. Something has already happened. He walked toward the door. Ethan rose quickly. Samuel, the man turned. Ethan did not know what he wanted to ask. Would his life fall apart? Would his father understand? Would the emptiness end? Would he have to give everything away? Would he discover that he had wasted 32 years? All the questions arrived at once. Samuel waited. Ethan finally asked, "How do I know whether this feeling is real?" Samuel looked at him with an expression that held no urgency. "You walked out of a building with everything and came here with nothing." Then he left. Ethan remained standing beside the booth. The waitress approached with the check. He reached for his wallet and remembered that he did not have it. "I left everything at the hotel," he said. The waitress looked at the television, then at Ethan. "I guessed. I can come back." She took the check from the table. "Your friend paid." "He is not my friend." She looked toward the door Samuel had just passed through. "He knew your name." Ethan sat again. He remained in the diner until morning. He did not make a plan. He did not decide to abandon the company, reject his family, or give away his wealth. He did something much smaller. He stayed without distraction. He allowed the question to remain. What is all of this for? For the first time, Ethan did not try to answer it quickly. He let it expose what his life had hidden. He saw that he had confused being wanted with being known. He had confused stimulation with happiness. He had confused access with freedom. He had confused a full schedule with a meaningful life. He had spent years making sure that wanting never had enough time to become honest. The waitress refilled his coffee. Ethan thanked her. He looked at the flyer again. The group met that evening at 7. At 6:45, Ethan arrived at a community center in Queens, wearing the same clothes from the party. No one greeted him by title. No one asked about the acquisition. No one offered him a special seat. Samuel was arranging metal chairs in a circle. He looked up when Ethan entered. He did not smile as though a victory had occurred. He simply pointed toward an empty chair. Ethan sat. 12 people entered after him. A nurse, a construction worker, a retired teacher, a college student, a mother holding a sleeping child, a man wearing a delivery uniform. People whose lives would never appear beside his on a business network. Samuel sat with them. He asked everyone to become quiet. The silence arrived. Ethan felt the immediate impulse to reach for his phone. It was still at the hotel. He wanted to speak. He wanted instructions. He wanted Samuel to explain exactly what would happen and how long it would take. No explanation came. Ethan remained seated. At first, he heard only movement, breathing, a chair shifting, someone clearing a throat. Then he heard his own mind. It was louder than the party had been. Memories, plans, judgments, fears, and unfinished conversations rose all at once. Tss. Ethan wanted to leave. He remained seated. The question returned. What is all of this for? This time, another question followed it. What would remain if none of it could tell me who I am? Ethan opened his eyes. Samuel was sitting across from him. No one in the room appeared to be waiting for Ethan to perform. No one needed him to be impressive. No one was asking him to become smaller either. He was simply another person sitting in a metal chair, trying to understand what it meant to be alive. Something inside him softened. Not completely, not permanently. Only enough for one full breath to enter without resistance. Ethan closed his eyes again. For the first time in his life, the silence was not empty. Story 3. The man who asked for the hardest place. 3 volunteers had been hospitalized. 1 had nearly been killed, and Noah Mercer asked to be sent there anyway. The place was known as Granite Ridge, a maximum security prison in California's Central Valley. Men arrived there after every other institution had failed to contain them. Some had spent decades fighting. Some had forgotten how to speak without threatening. Some had learned so young that kindness was dangerous that they attacked it before it could get close. Teachers rarely lasted. Counselors transferred out. Religious volunteers came once, heard the doors lock behind them, and never returned. Noah knew all of this before he requested the assignment. He was 41 years old, a former army medic who had spent the previous 7 years studying under a Buddhist teacher named Daniel Cho at a small practice center outside Sacramento. Noah had not come to meditation because he wanted peace. He had come because he could not sleep. During his second deployment, an explosive device struck the vehicle in front of his convoy. Noah reached the men inside before the fire spread. He saved one. He could not save the others. For years, he carried the sounds of that day inside him. He became skilled at appearing calm while his mind remained at war. He worked. He drank. He exercised until exhaustion replaced memory. He avoided crowded restaurants because he needed to see every entrance. He slept with a weapon close enough to touch. When people asked how he was doing, he said he was fine with such confidence that they stopped asking. Then one night, Noah woke with his hand around his wife's wrist. She had touched his shoulder while he was dreaming. He had reacted before recognizing her. The fear in her eyes ended the life he had been pretending was still working. He moved out the following week, not because she demanded it, because he no longer trusted what might happen while he was asleep. Daniel Cho met Noah several months later. Noah attended a meditation group after another veteran told him it might help. He sat near the exit. He kept his shoes on. He watched every person in the room. When Daniel asked the group to close their eyes, Noah refused. Daniel did not correct him. He simply said, "Then keep them open." That was why Noah returned. No one demanded that he become peaceful before being welcomed into the room. No one treated his anger as proof that he had failed. Daniel taught him to notice what happened before the anger, the tightening in his stomach, the pressure behind his eyes, the sudden certainty that someone was about to control, embarrass, or abandon him. The anger had always seemed immediate. Through practice, Noah began to see the small space before it. Inside that space lived fear. Under the fear lived grief. Under the grief lived a man who still believed he should have saved everyone. Noah practiced for years. He sat through memories he had once drowned in alcohol. He learned how shame changed his posture before he noticed the thought. He learned that an emotion could be powerful without being an order. He learned that pain did not become smaller when ignored. It became less honest. Eventually, Noah began helping other veterans. He never offered easy answers. He did not tell them to forgive themselves. He did not promise that meditation would erase what they had seen or done. He sat with them. That was what made them trust him. One winter morning, Daniel told Noah that several institutions had requested volunteers. A hospital needed someone to sit with terminal patients. A veterans center needed a weekly meditation instructor. A county jail wanted help developing a stress reduction program. Noah listened. Then Daniel mentioned Granite Ridge. The prison administration had contacted every Buddhist organization within driving distance. No one had agreed to go. "They want someone to lead a 12-week program," Daniel said. "I will go." Daniel studied his face. "You answered quickly. I do not need more time." "That may be why you need more time." Noah leaned back. "You do not think I am ready." "I did not say that." "Then what are you saying?" "I want to know why you chose the hardest place before hearing anything else." Noah looked down at his hands. The answer came easily. "Because those men need it most." Daniel remained silent. Noah waited. Daniel had a way of doing that. He allowed a person's first answer to exhaust itself. Noah tried again. "Because no one else wants to go." Daniel continued waiting. Noah felt irritation rise. He recognized it. Pressure behind the eyes, tightness in the jaw, the feeling of being examined. He breathed once before speaking. "Because I know what it is like to be treated as though the worst thing inside you is the only thing anyone can see." Daniel nodded. "That answer is closer. Is it enough?" "No." Noah's irritation returned. "What else do you want?" "I want to know what you will carry into that prison." "A meditation program. That is what will be in your bag." I asked. "What will be inside you?" Noah did not answer. Daniel folded his hands. "The men at Granite Ridge will know within minutes whether you have come to help them or repair yourself through them." I am not trying to repair myself. Then you are not paying attention. The words struck hard. Noah stood. Daniel did not ask him to sit down. Noah walked to the door. His hand touched the handle. Then he stopped. Years earlier, he would have left. He would have called Daniel arrogant. He would have decided the entire practice was weak, passive, and useless. Instead, Noah turned around. What do I need to understand? Daniel pointed toward the chair. Noah sat. Daniel spoke calmly. Granite Ridge is not an idea. It is not a symbol of suffering. It is a place filled with human beings who have survived by reading weakness quickly. I understand. No, you understand the sentence. Daniel leaned forward. Some will insult you. Noah shrugged. I have been insulted. They will not insult the person you pretend to be. They will find the part of you that still hurts and speak directly to it. Noah's expression changed. Daniel continued. They will study your clothes, your hands, your military history, your marriage, your need to be useful. They will discover what creates a reaction. I will not react. That is not an answer. What do you want me to say? Daniel looked directly at him. If they insult you, what will you do? Noah considered the question. I will remember that words are the least harmful thing they could offer. Daniel nodded slightly. And if they spit on you? Noah's jaw tightened. He imagined it. A man standing close. The humiliation. The other prisoners watching. The old reflex rose instantly. Move first. Take control. Make sure it never happens again. Noah breathed. I will be grateful they did not strike me. And if they strike you, I will be grateful they did not use a weapon. And if they use a weapon? Noah looked away. The room had become very quiet. Daniel did not soften the question. If someone attacks you with a weapon, what will you do? Noah thought about the prison. He thought about men who carried sharpened metal because steel felt more reliable than another person. I will be grateful if I survive. Daniel's eyes remained on him. And if you do not? Noah did not answer. The question entered a place beyond preparation. He had faced death before, but facing death during war was different. There had been a uniform, a mission, a team. There had been a reason recognized by everyone around him. Granite Ridge offered none of that. He could be killed by someone who did not know him, someone who might attack because of a rumor, a misunderstanding, or the simple need to prove something before others. Noah felt fear move through his body. He allowed it. Daniel waited. Finally, Noah spoke. Then I will not spend my final moment hating the person who did it. Daniel said nothing. Noah continued. I have already watched people die while carrying fear. I have watched them die confused. I have watched them die calling for someone who could not hear them. His voice changed. If death finds me there, I want to meet it without giving my last breath to hatred. Daniel's expression remained steady. Noah looked down. I do not want to die. I know. I am not pretending I would feel nothing. I know. I would be afraid. Daniel nodded. Then answer again. Noah raised his eyes. If they kill you, what will you do? Noah spoke slowly. I will accept that I knew the risk and went anyway. Why? Because their violence cannot be the only thing that decides who is willing to enter the room. Daniel sat back. For several seconds, neither man moved. Then Daniel said, Now you may go. Noah arrived at Granite Ridge 2 weeks later. The prison administration required him to complete security training. He learned which doors he could touch. He learned where to stand during an alarm. He learned never to accept a gift, carry a message, share personal contact information, or make a promise he could not keep. An officer named Sergeant Alvarez walked him through the unit. You were in the army, Alvarez asked. Yes, that will help for about 5 minutes. I assumed as much. Do not assume anything in here. Alvarez stopped him before the entrance to the program room. They will test you. I know. No, you were told. That is different. The door opened. 12 men entered. Some sat. Some remained standing. One looked at Noah's shoes and laughed. Another asked whether the prison had hired a monk from a shopping mall. A third man looked at Noah's hands. You ever kill anybody? soldier. The room changed. Noah recognized what had happened. The question was not curiosity. It was a blade placed carefully against the part of him most likely to move. He felt the pressure behind his eyes. His chest tightened. Every man in the room watched him. Noah could have refused to answer. He could have redirected the conversation. He could have quoted the prison rules. Instead, he said, "I have been present when people died." The man smiled. That was not the question. "No." "So you did?" Noah held his gaze. "I carry things I wish had happened differently." The smile weakened. Another prisoner spoke. "You come here to feel better about yourself?" The question landed closer than the first. Noah remembered Daniel's warning. "They will know whether you have come to repair yourself through them." "Partly," Noah said. Several men laughed. He continued, "I came because I believe this practice can help. I also came because helping others makes me feel useful. If I pretend that second part is not true, you will know I am lying." The laughter stopped. A man near the wall crossed his arms. "What are you supposed to teach us? How to sit still for 10 minutes. More laughter. "That is it. For today, we sit still all day." "No, you wait all day. That is different." A few men looked at him more carefully. Noah placed a small timer on the table. "You do not have to close your eyes. You do not have to trust me. You do not have to believe meditation works. What do we have to do? Choose not to move for 10 minutes. The man who had asked about killing stepped closer. "What if I walk out?" "Then you walk out." "What if I make you walk out?" Sergeant Alvarez shifted near the door. Noah felt everyone notice. He could have looked toward the officer. He did not. "Then I will return next week." The man stared at him. "You think you are tough?" "No." "You think we are broken?" "No." "You think you are better than us?" Noah answered immediately. "No." The man stepped closer. "You do not know anything about me." "That is true." "You do not know what I did." "That is also true." "Then why are you here?" Noah looked at the empty chairs. "Because whatever you did, you still have a mind that suffers." No one spoke. And because suffering can be studied, the man's expression shifted. Not softened. Shifted. The hostility had expected resistance. It had found none. Noah started the timer. 4 men left immediately. 1 kicked a chair on his way out. The remaining 8 sat. Noah instructed them to notice the breath without changing it. Within 20 seconds, someone cursed. Another began tapping his foot. A man opened his eyes and said, "This is stupid." Noah kept his eyes open. "Yes." The man looked surprised. "It feels stupid," Noah said. "Stay." After 2 minutes, a prisoner named Reggie stood and walked toward the door. He stopped before leaving. "What am I supposed to do with the thoughts?" "Nothing. They do not stop." "I did not say they would." "Then what is the point?" "To discover that a thought can exist without controlling your next action." Reggie stared at him. Then he returned to his chair. The 10 minutes ended. No one claimed to feel peaceful. One man said his anxiety had become worse. Another said he had remembered something he did not want to remember. Noah did not tell them the session had been successful. He thanked them for staying. The following week, 11 men arrived. The man who had questioned Noah about killing returned. His name was Darius King. He sat in the front row during the meditation. Darius spoke without opening his eyes. "You are breathing too loud." Noah remained still. Darius opened his eyes. "I said you are breathing too loud." Noah continued breathing. Darius stood. He walked close enough that Noah could feel him nearby. Sergeant Alvarez moved toward the room. Noah raised one hand slightly. The officer stopped. Darius leaned down. "You are not listening." "I hear you." "Then stop." Noah looked up. "I cannot practice breathing while trying not to breathe." A few men laughed. Darius did not. He spat on the floor beside Noah's shoe. Noah's body reacted. The response was immediate. Heat, tension, the impulse to stand. He remembered Daniel's question. "And if they spit on you?" Noah looked at the saliva. Then he looked at Darius. "We have 6 minutes left. Darius waited for anger. Noah gave him none. He returned to his chair. The session continued. The tests did not end after that. They changed. One man mocked Noah's failed marriage. Another obtained the names of men from Noah's former unit and mentioned them during class. Someone told him Marcus had probably died because Noah was a coward. The name was wrong. The wound was not. Noah's hands shook. He placed them on his knees. He stayed. After the session, he went to his car and cried. The following week, he returned. A month passed. Then 2. The prison added a second weekly group because the first had become full. Men began sitting in their cells between sessions. Some practiced before parole hearings. Some practiced after receiving bad news from home. One man used the breathing exercise during a confrontation and walked away before a fight began. Another said he had slept through an entire night for the first time in 14 years. Noah did not present these moments as miracles. Nothing in Granite Ridge changed quickly. Men still fought. Officers still responded to alarms. Some participants attended for weeks and suddenly stopped. One prisoner threatened Noah after Noah refused to carry a message to someone outside. The man promised to cut him the next time they met. Noah reported the threat as required. He did not demand that the prisoner be permanently removed from the group. 2 weeks later, the man returned under supervision. He sat in the back. He did not apologize. Noah did not ask him to. They practiced. By the end of 12 weeks, more than 80 men had attended at least one session. The administration offered to extend the program through the summer. Noah agreed. Other volunteers joined him. A psychologist helped adapt the exercises for trauma. A former prisoner began speaking to men approaching release. An officer requested a separate class for staff. By the end of the year, more than 500 prisoners had passed through the program. The prison converted an unused storage room into a permanent meditation space. The men built the benches themselves. Darius King helped carry them in. He had not become gentle. He still spoke sharply. He still distrusted quickly. But he no longer seemed to need every person in the room to fear him. One evening, after the final group had ended, Darius remained seated. Noah began collecting the cushions. Darius watched him. "You remember the first day?" "Yes. I wanted you gone." "I know. I thought you were fake." "I know. I kept waiting for you to show it." Noah placed the cushions in a cabinet. "Did I?" Darius looked toward the closed door. "Sometimes." Noah stopped. Darius continued. "You got angry." "Yes." "You got scared." "Yes." "You wanted to hit me when I said that thing about your friend." Noah did not deny it. Darius nodded. "But you did not leave." "No." "Why not?" Noah closed the cabinet. "Because I knew you were not only the person saying those things." Darius looked at him. Noah added, "And I did not want to be only the person reacting to them." Darius was silent. Then he asked, "What happens when this place finally gets to you?" "It already has." "That is not what I mean." "I know." Darius leaned forward. "What happens when somebody does something you cannot sit through?" Noah thought about Daniel's questions. The insults, the spit, the fists, the weapons, death. He sat across from Darius. "I do not know." Darius gave a short laugh. "That is your answer. That is the honest answer." Darius looked disappointed. Noah continued, "I do not know what every moment will ask of me. I know what I want to practice before it arrives." "What?" "Not surrendering my mind to the worst thing another person does." Darius looked down at his hands. For years, those hands had been treated as evidence. Evidence of danger. Evidence of guilt. Evidence that the world had been right to lock every door around him. He opened them slowly. "My daughter is coming Saturday," he said. Noah waited. "She has not visited in 9 years. What are you afraid will happen?" "She will look at me and see what everybody sees." "What do they see?" Darius's hands closed again. "What I did." Noah did not tell him that his daughter would forgive him. He did not promise that the visit would go well. He did not say Darius had changed. He asked, "Can you let her see the man who is sitting here now?" Darius's jaw tightened. What if that is not enough? It may not be. The answer hurt. Noah allowed it to hurt. Darius looked toward the door. Then he placed both hands on his knees. How long? Noah sat upright. 10 minutes. Darius closed his eyes. The prison continued around them. Doors locked. Orders were called. Men are geared in distant units. Nothing outside the room had agreed to become peaceful. Darius breathed. Noah remained with him. Neither man asked the world to become less difficult before they began. Story 4. The answer that made no sound. 32 of the smartest people in America answered the question, and the only man who understood it never opened his mouth. The question had been printed across every program at the National Forum on Human Division in Washington. How does a person stop seeing another human being as separate from themselves? The forum had been created after a year of protests, shootings, political violence, and public grief. Universities sent philosophers. Hospitals sent neuroscientists. Churches sent ministers. Meditation centers sent teachers who had spent decades studying the mind. Civil rights organizations sent attorneys who had watched the word justice change meaning depending on who was speaking. Every seat had been filled months in advance. Thousands more watched online. Dr. Miriam Cole stood at the center of it all. At 54, Miriam was one of the most respected scholars of religion and ethics in the country. She had advised senators, spoken before the United Nations, written 7 books, and spent most of her adult life studying how human beings created enemies. She knew every major theory. She knew how fear shaped identity. She knew how tribes formed. She knew why people protected those who resembled them and distrusted those who did not. She knew the language of division so well that journalists called her whenever the country appeared to be tearing itself apart. That year, they called often. Miriam had designed the forum around one question: not how to reduce conflict, not how to improve communication, not how to make opposing groups tolerate one another. Those questions assumed the groups were separate and needed a bridge. Miriam wanted to go deeper. She wanted to ask whether the separation itself was as permanent as people believed. The first speaker was a neuroscientist from California. He explained that the brain constantly divided experience into categories: safe and dangerous, familiar and unfamiliar, self and other. The brain did this before conscious thought. To live without division, he said, a person had to recognize that the mind's categories were survival tools, not perfect descriptions of reality. The audience applauded. The second speaker was a civil rights attorney from Atlanta. She said division ended when people stopped treating another person's suffering as less urgent because it happened to someone with a different name, skin color, neighborhood, or political identity. Justice begins, she said, when pain no longer requires similarity before we take it seriously. The audience rose. The third speaker was a Buddhist teacher from Oregon. He described the self as a collection of memories, sensations, habits, and relationships. He said no person existed alone. Every meal contained the labor of strangers. Every sentence carried words learned from others. Every body continued because of air, water, soil, and care it could never create by itself. What we call independence, he said, is interdependence we have stopped noticing. Again, the audience applauded. The answers continued. A rabbi spoke about the sacred image carried by every person. A pastor spoke about loving an enemy before the enemy had changed. A Muslim chaplain described sitting with prisoners who had been abandoned by everyone they loved. A psychologist explained how trauma caused people to perceive danger in faces that resembled those who had harmed them. A former soldier described the moment he stopped calling the people across the battlefield targets and remembered that each one had a mother waiting somewhere. A woman who had survived a hate crime said healing began when she refused to let the man who attacked her determine the size of her heart. Each answer was thoughtful. Each answer was moving. Each answer approached the same invisible boundary from a different direction. By late afternoon, 31 speakers had responded. Only one remained. His name was David Warren. Most people in the audience had never heard of him. He was not a professor. He had never written a book. He had no religious title. He owned a commercial plumbing company in Baltimore. He had been married for 28 years. He had 3 children, 2 grandchildren, 46 employees, a mortgage, a bad left knee, and a habit of answering emails before sunrise. Nothing about his life appeared spiritual from the outside. That was exactly why Miriam had invited him. She had met David 3 years earlier at a restorative justice program inside a Maryland prison. Miriam had gone there to observe a dialogue between violent offenders and families who had lost loved ones. She expected to take notes. She expected to ask questions. She expected to leave with material for a chapter she was writing. David was seated in the circle when she arrived. His younger brother, Aaron, had been killed during a robbery 14 years earlier. Aaron had owned a small convenience store. One night, a 19-year-old named Leon Brooks entered with a gun. Leon demanded money. Aaron gave it to him. Leon fired anyway. He later said the weapon went off when Aaron moved. David never believed that explanation. For years, he imagined what he would say if he met Leon. He imagined making him afraid. He imagined forcing him to understand the size of what he had taken. He imagined looking into Leon's eyes and finding nothing human there. When the prison offered David a chance to meet him, he refused. The offer returned 2 years later. David refused again. The third time, his wife asked him one question: "How much longer are you willing to let this man live inside our house?" David became angry. Leon was not inside their house. Leon was locked inside a prison. But David understood what she meant. Aaron's death sat at their dinner table. It came on vacations. It entered conversations that had nothing to do with him. It lived inside David's body every time someone mentioned forgiveness. David agreed to the meeting, not because he wanted peace, but because he wanted Leon to see what he had done. He entered the prison, carrying 14 years of words. Leon entered, carrying none. The young man David had imagined was gone. Leon was 33. His hair had begun to grey. He sat, with his hands pressed together, and could not raise his eyes. David had prepared a speech. He had written it several times. He wanted every sentence to land. He wanted Leon to understand that Aaron had been more than the final minute of his life. Aaron had coached youth baseball. He had called their mother every Sunday. He had laughed too loudly. He had given customers groceries when they could not pay. He had been a husband, a father, a brother, and a man who should still have been alive. David began reading. Halfway through, Leon started crying. David hated him for it. The tears felt like theft. Leon had taken Aaron's life. Now, he was trying to take the grief as well. David stopped reading. "Do not do that," he said. Leon looked up. "Do what?" "Cry like you are the one who lost someone." Leon wiped his face. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he spoke. "My mother stopped visiting me 9 years ago." David stared at him. "I am not asking you to feel sorry for me," Leon said. "I am telling you I know what it is to make yourself impossible to love." David wanted to reject the sentence. He wanted to place Leon back into the category where he belonged. Murderer, coward, the man who killed Aaron. That category had held David together for 14 years. It told him where to place the anger. It told him who was innocent and who was guilty. It made the world clear. Then Leon said something David had not expected. "I practiced what I would say to you." David tightened his grip on the pages. "I had an apology. I had explanations. I had things I learned in here. But when you started talking about your brother, I realized every sentence I prepared was about me." David looked at him. Leon continued, "I do not know how to speak without trying to make myself less guilty." No one in the circle moved. Leon placed both hands on the table. "So I am not going to." He became silent. David waited for the apology. It did not come. He waited for the explanation. It did not come. Leon did not ask for forgiveness. He did not describe his childhood. He did not mention drugs, fear, poverty, or the panic he claimed to have felt that night. He sat in front of David without defending himself. For the first time, David saw the full weight of what guilt had done to another human body. He did not forgive Leon that day. He did not embrace him. He did not tell him everything was all right. Everything was not all right. Aaron was dead. Leon had killed him. Nothing in the room changed those facts. But something happened that David could not explain. For several seconds, he stopped seeing Leon as a wall separating him from his brother. He saw a frightened 19-year-old who had fired a gun. He saw a 33-year-old man who had lived every day since then inside that action. He saw the person who had destroyed his family. He saw someone else's son. Both were true at the same time. David returned to the prison the following month. Then again, he began volunteering in the restorative justice program. He never called himself a teacher. He listened. He sat with parents whose children had been killed. He sat with men who had killed someone else's child. He did not ask either group to pretend the difference between them had disappeared. He asked them to remain long enough to see that the difference was not the only truth in the room. That was where Miriam met him. She watched David sit between a grieving mother and the man responsible for her son's death. The mother was shouting. The prisoner was staring at the floor. Every trained facilitator in the room appeared ready to intervene. David did nothing. He stayed present. He did not silence the mother. He did not rescue the prisoner. He did not turn the pain into a lesson. He allowed both people to remain fully human without deciding which one deserved the room more. Afterward, Miriam approached him. "What method were you using?" she asked. David looked confused. "I was sitting, during the confrontation." "So do I." "You did not redirect either of them?" "No." "You did not ask them to regulate their emotions?" "No." "You did not remind them of the program rules?" They remembered. Miriam studied him. "How did you know the situation would not become dangerous?" "I did not." "Then why did you remain silent?" David looked toward the closed meeting room. "Because they were finally speaking to each other instead of to the stories they had built." Miriam remembered that sentence. When she began organizing the National Forum on Human Division, she invited David. He declined. She called him. He declined again. She offered to cover his travel and close his company's office for the day. David laughed. "You cannot close my company. I can compensate your employees. That is not the issue." "What is the issue?" "I have nothing to say to 3,000 people. You speak to people in prison every week. I listen to people in prison every week. That is why I need you." David remained silent on the phone. Miriam continued. "There will be 31 experts before you. That sounds like 31 reasons you do not need me. They will explain the subject." "And what do you expect me to do?" Miriam answered honestly. "I do not know." That was the reason David finally agreed. Now he sat beside the stage as the 31st speaker completed her answer. The woman was a poet whose daughter had died in a school shooting. She read a piece about grief crossing political boundaries. By the final line, people throughout the audience were crying. The applause lasted nearly 2 minutes. Miriam returned to the microphone. She looked at David. He remained seated. She introduced him. She described his company, his family, and his restorative justice work. David disliked every word. The introduction made him sound like someone who had resolved his grief and transformed it into service. That was not true. Some mornings, he still woke angry. Some anniversaries, he still imagined Leon as the 19-year-old holding the gun. Some days, compassion felt real. Other days, it felt like a word invented by people who had not lost enough. David stood. He carried no notes. He walked to the chair placed at the center of the stage. Miriam remained nearby. "David," she said, "you have heard 31 answers today." He nodded. "We have spoken about biology, trauma, justice, faith, identity, compassion, and forgiveness." David looked toward the audience. Miriam asked the question one final time. "How does a person stop dividing the world into self and other?" David sat down. He placed both feet on the floor. He rested his hands on his legs. Then he said nothing. At first, the audience assumed he was gathering his thoughts. A few people leaned forward. Cameras focused on his face. David continued sitting. 10 seconds passed. Then 20. Miriam wondered whether he had forgotten the question. She took one step toward him. David looked at her. There was no confusion in his expression. He had heard her. 30 seconds passed. Someone in the audience coughed. A phone vibrated. A man near the front shifted impatiently. David remained silent. Miriam began to feel the pressure of the broadcast. Thousands of people were watching. Sponsors had paid for the event. The schedule was already running late. David had been given 8 minutes. He had used nearly one without speaking. She considered repeating the question. Then she noticed what was happening inside herself. She was dividing the moment. Successful or failed, profound or embarrassing, speaker or audience, expert or ordinary man. She wanted David to produce something she could recognize as an answer. David continued sitting. 2 minutes passed. The silence changed. It was no longer an empty space before a speech. It had become the event itself. People stopped waiting for David to begin. They became aware of their own waiting. A young man in the 3rd row lowered the phone he had been recording with. A woman who had spent the day taking notes placed her pen on her lap. One of the earlier speakers looked toward the person seated beside him. They had argued publicly about politics only months before. Neither looked away. David's silence did not force unity. It did not erase disagreement. It removed the place where everyone had been hiding from the question. There was no sentence to evaluate, no argument to oppose, no position to defend. Without words, there was no speaker standing on one side and an idea placed on the other. There was only a room full of people breathing. Miriam felt the question turn toward her. How does a person stop dividing the world into self and other? Every answer offered that day had required a division. The person explaining and the thing being explained. The healer and the wounded. The victim and the offender. The wise and the confused. Even the word unity created something separate called division. David had not crossed the line. He had refused to draw it. 3 minutes passed. A man stood near the back. Miriam recognized him as a state legislator who had spent the previous year attacking several people seated in the room. She expected him to leave. Instead, he removed his suit jacket and sat again. A woman began crying quietly. The stranger beside her reached for her hand. Neither asked how the other voted. David remained still. He was not performing calm. Miriam could see the tension in his jaw. She understood that he was thinking about Aaron. She knew Leon was watching from the prison library. David had arranged for the forum to be broadcast there, somewhere inside Granite Ridge Correctional Institution. The man who killed his brother was watching him sit in silence before the country. David did not speak for Aaron. He did not speak for Leon. He did not place himself between them. He allowed both men to exist inside him without turning one into a reason to erase the other. 4 minutes passed. The audience no longer appeared uncomfortable. They appeared unprotected. There were no ideas between them. Nothing to applaud. Nothing to reject. Nothing to carry home as proof that they had been right. Miriam looked at the clock. Then she turned it face down. David saw her do it. His eyes softened. 5 minutes passed. The silence held the neuroscientist and the minister, the grieving mother and the prison chaplain, the activist and the police chief, the senator and the student who had been arrested outside his office. For one moment, none of their titles disappeared. They simply stopped being the most important truth. David stood. The audience reacted immediately. People expected the speech to begin now. He walked toward Miriam. He stopped beside her. She looked at him. "Is that your answer?" she asked. David remained silent. Miriam's eyes filled. She turned toward the audience. Every part of her professional training wanted to explain what had happened. She wanted to give the silence a name. She wanted to connect it to philosophy, religion, neuroscience, and ethics. She wanted to make it useful. Then she understood that explanation would rebuild the distance David had just removed. She lowered the microphone. David walked back to his seat. No one applauded. Applause would have placed him on one side. and everyone else on the other. The room remained quiet. On the large screen behind the stage, the question was still visible. How does a person stop seeing another human being as separate from themselves? A technician reached to remove it. Miriam raised her hand. The technician stopped. The question remained. So did the silence. For the first time all day, no one in the room was standing on the other side of an answer. Story 5. The man with nothing left to protect. The richest man in Massachusetts frightened everyone at the monastery by repeating the same sentence every night. I finally have nothing to protect. For more than 20 years, Richard Vail had been one of the most powerful businessmen on the East Coast. He founded a private security company after serving in the United States Navy. The company began with 12 employees and one government contract. By the time Richard turned 56, it operated in 32 states, guarded airports and hospitals, protected corporate executives, and managed security systems for some of the wealthiest families in America. Richard knew how danger moved. He knew how criminals studied routines. He knew how kidnappers selected targets. He knew how easily a peaceful building could become a crime scene. His company had made him wealthy because Richard could imagine every possible disaster before it happened. That same ability slowly destroyed his life. At first, the precautions were reasonable. A security system at home, a driver trained in defensive movement, background checks for domestic employees, private protection during major events. Then Richard's company grew. His name appeared in newspapers. His face appeared on financial programs. A former employee sued him. A competitor sent threatening messages. Someone posted the address of Richard's oldest daughter online. After that, security was no longer part of his life. Security became his life. Cameras covered every entrance to his home. Motion sensors monitored the property. 2 guards remained outside at all times. Another slept in a room near the kitchen. Richard's bedroom door could withstand gunfire. The windows were reinforced. A control panel beside his bed showed every camera feed. He checked it before sleeping. He checked it when he woke during the night. He checked it before his feet touched the floor in the morning. His wife, Caroline, told him the house felt like a prison. Richard answered that prisons were designed to keep dangerous people in. Their house was designed to keep dangerous people out. Caroline stopped arguing. She had learned that every concern became another problem for Richard to solve. If she said the guards made her uncomfortable, he replaced them with guards who spoke less. If she said the cameras felt invasive, he moved them farther from the windows. If she said she missed being alone with him, Richard scheduled a private weekend at a resort and sent an advance team 2 days before they arrived. He heard every word she said. He understood none of it. Their daughters stopped bringing friends home. Richard believed they were becoming independent. Caroline knew they were embarrassed. When Richard entered a restaurant, he did not see tables. He saw exits. He saw blind corners. He saw hands beneath jackets. He saw the man who had entered alone and the woman who appeared to be watching the door. He never sat with his back exposed. He never ate food that had been left unattended. He never traveled without a second vehicle. He never told anyone where he was going until the last possible moment. People called him disciplined. Richard called it preparation. No one called it fear. Not even Richard. Fear was what happened to people who did not know what to do. Richard always knew what to do. When his pulse accelerated, he reviewed the exits. When he felt watched, he changed routes. When a stranger approached too quickly, Richard's guards stepped forward. Every fear produced an action. Every action produced temporary relief. Every relief convinced Richard that the danger had been real. The more protected he became, the less safe he felt. He built a panic room. Then he worried someone might block the entrance. He hired more guards. Then he worried one of them could be bribed. He installed facial recognition technology. Then he read a report about how facial recognition could be defeated. He replaced the system. Then he began to distrust the people who had installed it. Richard could defend against every threat, except the one created by defending against all of them. The breaking point came at his daughter's wedding. Emily wanted a small ceremony at a vineyard in Virginia. Richard agreed. Then he requested the guest list. Emily sent it. He asked for dates of birth. She refused. Richard's security director explained that complete background checks would be impossible without them. Emily told her father that her wedding guests were not suspects. Richard said that was exactly what people always believed before something happened. The argument lasted 3 days. Caroline finally convinced Emily to provide the information. Richard's company investigated every guest. One man had been arrested during a college protest. A woman's former boyfriend had served time for assault. A waiter hired by the venue had used 2 different last names. Richard demanded replacements. Emily stopped speaking to him. On the wedding day, 24 security personnel surrounded the property. Guests passed through metal detectors. Delivery vehicles were searched. A drone monitored the road. Richard wore an earpiece during the ceremony. When Emily walked toward her fiancé, everyone turned to watch her. Richard watched the roof. He saw movement near an upper window. His hand rose. 4 guards moved immediately. The music stopped. Guests turned. Emily froze in the aisle. The movement came from a photographer, changing position. No weapon. No intruder. No threat. The guards returned to their posts. Someone restarted the music. Emily continued walking. She did not look at her father. At the reception, Richard tried to approach her. She stepped away. "Not tonight," she said. "I was protecting you. You stopped my wedding for less than a minute. You made everyone afraid. They were safe." Emily looked directly at him. "No, Dad. They were protected. That is not the same thing." Richard felt anger rise. He wanted to explain the difference between professionals and civilians. He wanted to tell her how quickly danger could appear. He wanted to remind her of every threat his company had prevented. Instead, he noticed Caroline standing nearby. She had heard Emily. Her expression told him she agreed. Richard left the reception before the first dance. He told himself he was giving his daughter space. The truth was that he could not remain in a room where his protection was being described as harm. 2 months later, Caroline asked for a separation. She did not accuse him of infidelity. She did not say he had stopped loving her. She said something worse. "You love us like we are valuable objects someone might steal." Richard stared at her. "That is not fair. I know you would die for us." "Then how can you say that?" "Because you do not know how to live with us." Richard walked out of the room. He spent that night in his office. At 2 in the morning, he watched camera feeds from his empty house. A guard crossed the driveway. Another checked the rear entrance. Every door was locked. Every system was functioning. No one could get in. Caroline was upstairs packing. Richard had never been more protected. He had never felt more exposed. The divorce took 11 months. Richard approached it as another threat. He hired the best attorneys. He protected the company. He protected the properties. He protected his reputation. Caroline asked for less than the attorneys expected. She wanted the house in Connecticut, 1 investment account, and privacy. Richard gave her all 3. He moved into a penthouse in Boston with private elevator access and armed security in the lobby. The building had every feature he once believed would create peace. He could not sleep there. He began waking every hour to check the control panel. Some nights, he walked through every room himself. He opened closets. He tested locks. He checked windows that could not be opened. He called the lobby to confirm the guards were awake. They always were. One morning, Richard's physician told him his blood pressure had reached a dangerous level. "You need rest," the doctor said. "I sleep 6 hours. You remain unconscious for 6 hours. That is not the same as rest." Richard disliked the sentence because it sounded like something Caroline would have said. The doctor recommended medication, therapy, and time away from work. Richard accepted the medication. He ignored the rest. 3 weeks later, he collapsed during a board meeting. He did not have a heart attack. The doctors called it severe exhaustion, complicated by panic. Richard rejected the word. "I do not panic." His physician looked at the medical chart. Your heart rate reached 180. I thought I was having a cardiac event. You thought you were dying. That was a reasonable conclusion. Your tests show no cardiac damage. Then what happened? The physician sat beside the bed. Your body activated every emergency system it has. Richard waited. There was no emergency. For most people, that statement would have been reassuring. For Richard, it was humiliating. His body had responded to a threat that did not exist. He had spent his life teaching others how to identify danger, and now danger was being manufactured inside him. His company's board insisted he take a leave of absence. His daughters supported the decision. Caroline sent one message: "Please use the time to become someone who can be alone without guarding the door." Richard did not respond. He spent the first 2 weeks of leave inside the penthouse. He read reports. He monitored the company. He watched financial news. He kept the camera feeds visible on a screen beside his desk. Nothing changed. Then an old friend called. Michael Tan had served with Richard in the Navy. They had not spoken in 5 years. Michael had left military contracting and become a meditation teacher at a monastery in western Massachusetts. Richard considered that career change evidence of a breakdown. Michael considered Richard's life evidence of the same. "I heard about the hospital," Michael said. "It was exhaustion." "I heard that too. What do you want?" "To invite you somewhere." "No, you do not know where. If you are there, it is probably quiet." "It is." "No." Michael laughed. Richard almost ended the call. Then Michael said, "How many guards are in your building?" "That is none of your business." "How many?" 6 during the day, 4 overnight. "And inside your apartment?" "No one." "So you are alone." "I am secure." Michael let the silence remain. Richard tightened his grip on the phone. "What is your point?" "My point is that you are guarded by 10 people and still sound like someone is hunting you." Richard stood. "I did not call for an evaluation." "You did not call at all." "Then perhaps we should keep it that way." Michael spoke before Richard could disconnect. "Come for 3 days." "To a monastery?" "Yes. I am not religious." "Neither is your blood pressure." Richard said nothing. "No guards," Michael added. "Then the answer is no." "No driver?" "No." "No private room?" "Absolutely not." "No phone?" Richard laughed. "You have lost your mind." "Possibly. What would I do there?" "Wake up, eat, work, sit down, go to sleep. I can do that here." "You are doing none of those things here." Richard ended the call. The following night, he woke at 1:14 in the morning. He checked the camera screen. A guard stood in the lobby. The elevator was empty. The hallway outside his penthouse was clear. Richard returned to bed. At 1:27, he checked again. At 1:43, he checked again. At 2:10, he saw movement near the service entrance. He called the lobby. A delivery worker had left a package for another resident. Richard asked for the worker's name. The guard did not know. Richard became angry. He demanded that the package be removed from the building. The guard complied. At 2:30, Richard stood alone beside his bed. The room was secure. The package was gone. His hands were shaking. He called Michael. "I will come for 3 days." Michael answered immediately. "I knew you would." "No, you did not." "No, I did not. My driver will bring me." "Your driver can leave at the gate." "I am keeping my phone." "You may keep it in a locked cabinet." "I want a private room." "You will sleep in the guest dormitory." "I will not share a room." "Then do not come." Richard almost cancelled. Instead, he asked, "What kind of security do you have?" "A wooden door." "What else?" "A bell." "For what?" "To wake people in the morning." Richard closed his eyes. "This is irresponsible." 3 days. Richard arrived on a Thursday afternoon. His driver carried 2 suitcases. Michael looked at them. "You are staying 3 days. I require medication, clothing, and work materials. You will not be working. I decide whether I work. Not here." Richard looked at his driver. "Wait in the car." Michael shook his head. The car leaves. Richard stepped closer. "I am not remaining in an isolated facility without transportation. There is a town 10 minutes away. By car, 25 minutes on foot. That is not acceptable. Michael looked at him. You may leave now. Richard felt something familiar rise. The need to control the terms. The need to make the environment reasonable. The need to ensure that an exit remained available. He turned toward the vehicle. His driver opened the door. Richard looked inside. The leather seat, the secure phone, the emergency medical kit. The man trained to move him away from danger. Everything familiar waited there. Richard remembered Emily standing in the aisle after the music stopped. He remembered Caroline's message. Someone who can be alone without guarding the door. Take the bags back, Richard said. His driver hesitated. Sir, leave the smaller one. Michael took Richard's phone. Richard held it for several seconds before releasing it. Michael placed it in a metal cabinet and locked the door. Richard watched the key disappear into Michael's pocket. I want access in an emergency. In a real emergency, you will have it. Who decides what is real? Michael looked at him. That is what you came here to learn. The first night, Richard inspected the dormitory. There were 4 beds. 2 were occupied by men he did not know. One was a public school teacher recovering from grief after his wife's death. The other worked as a mechanic in Springfield. Neither recognized Richard. He found that irritating. Then he found his irritation embarrassing. The window had no lock. Richard tested it twice. The dormitory door also had no lock. People can simply enter, he told Michael. Yes, while we are sleeping. Yes. You do not see a problem? No. What if someone dangerous arrives? Michael pointed toward the other residents. We meet everyone at the door. That is not security. No. Richard remained awake most of the night. Every sound activated him. Someone walked to the bathroom. A pipe moved. A door opened in another part of the building. The mechanic coughed. The teacher turned in bed. Richard's mind constructed threats faster than he could reject them. At 3 in the morning, he sat upright. The room was dark. The door remained unlocked. No guard stood outside. No camera monitored the hallway. Richard's heart began to race. He stood and walked toward the exit. Michael was sitting in a nearby room. He looked up as Richard entered. I need my phone. No, I am leaving. The gate is not locked. Call my driver. You may call him in the morning. This arrangement is unsafe. Michael nodded. Yes. Richard stopped. He had expected disagreement. What did you say? This arrangement cannot guarantee your safety. Then you admit it. Of course. How can you sleep here? I do not require a guarantee. Richard stared at him. Michael continued. No house can guarantee safety. No guard can guarantee safety. No amount of money can guarantee that someone you love will remain alive. That does not mean precautions are useless. I did not say they were. You are acting as though protection is a weakness. I am saying protection has become the only language you speak. Richard felt anger rise. Michael remained seated. You have confused reducing risk with controlling life. That distinction matters when something happens. Yes, you say that because nothing has happened to you. Michael's expression changed. Richard remembered too late. Michael's younger brother had died by suicide 9 years earlier. No guard could have prevented it. No locked door had made a difference. Richard looked away. I should not have said that. No. Michael waited. Richard remained standing. Finally, Michael asked, What do you believe will happen tonight? I do not know. Name it. Someone could enter, and then they could steal something. What did you bring? Richard thought about the single bag. Clothing, medication, a wallet with little cash. Nothing else. They could hurt someone. Yes. Richard's body tightened. Michael continued. A storm could damage the building. One of us could have a medical emergency. A fire could start. A vehicle could leave the road and strike the wall. You are not helping. I am not trying to make uncertainty disappear. Then what are you doing? Showing you that it was already here. Richard looked back toward the dormitory, the open window, the unlocked door. the sleeping strangers. He had spent decades building walls between himself and uncertainty. Michael was asking him to sleep inside it. "I cannot do this," Richard said. "You are doing it now. I am standing here." "Then stand here." Richard remained. His heart continued beating quickly. No one told him to calm down. No one promised that nothing bad would happen. Michael stayed seated. Richard stood in the doorway until the fear began to weaken. Not because the building became safer, not because a guard arrived. Nothing changed outside him. His body simply became too tired to continue sounding the alarm at full volume. Richard returned to bed. He slept for 40 minutes. The following day, he worked in the kitchen. A young resident handed him a knife to cut vegetables. Richard asked how many people had access to the knives. The resident thought he was joking. Richard was not. At lunch, everyone ate the same food. No one tasted Richard's meal first. No one watched the doors. No one checked the identity of a visitor who entered late. Richard noticed everything. He expected others to notice as well. They did not. That evening, Michael asked him to sit for 30 minutes. Richard lasted 11. He opened his eyes. "This is pointless." "What happened?" "Nothing." "What did you expect?" "I do not know." "You checked the door 14 times. Richard looked toward it. "I did not." "You did." "Why were you watching me?" "I was sitting in front of you." Richard stood. "I need air." "You need to check the building." Richard stopped. Michael was right. He had already planned the route. Main entrance, side door, kitchen windows, vehicle area. He felt exposed. "You make everything sound pathological." "No, I make it sound visible." Richard left the room. He checked every entrance. All were unsecured by his standards. Nothing had happened. The second night, he slept for 2 hours. The third night, he slept for 4. In the morning, Michael unlocked the cabinet and returned his phone. Richard expected relief. Instead, the device felt heavy. There were 93 emails, 27 missed calls, and dozens of messages. His company had handled every issue without him. The board had approved a decision he would have delayed. His assistant had resolved a contract problem. His daughters had sent no messages. Caroline had sent one. "Are you still there?" Richard typed, "Yes." 3 dots appeared. Then her response came. "Good." That single word reached him more deeply than all the urgent messages from his company. Richard placed the phone on the table. "When does my driver arrive?" he asked. "Whenever you call him." Richard looked toward the cabinet. "May I stay another day?" Michael nodded. Richard stayed another week, then another. He resigned as chief executive officer 3 months later. He kept ownership in the company, but transferred daily control to the board. The financial press called the decision unexpected. One newspaper suggested Richard had suffered a mental breakdown. Another described his retreat as a strategic pause. Former employees claimed he would return. Competitors predicted the company would weaken without him. Richard read none of it. He moved into a small room at the monastery. He owned 2 sets of work clothes, a winter coat, medication, several books, and 1 photograph of his daughters. He washed dishes. He repaired plumbing. He helped manage building maintenance. The man who had once supervised thousands of employees now cleaned bathrooms beside a mechanic who still did not know how wealthy he was. Richard's family did not understand. Emily thought he was punishing himself. His younger daughter believed he would become bored. Caroline feared he had found a new way to avoid ordinary life. Richard did not try to persuade them. He invited them to visit. For the first time, the invitation contained no security instructions, no approved route, no background check for the person driving them, no list of prohibited items. Emily came first. She entered the building and found her father carrying a bag of garbage. He hugged her. She remained stiff. "You look different," she said. "I sleep. You could sleep at home. I could not." They sat together. Richard did not check the door. Emily noticed. He asked about her marriage. She gave a cautious answer. He listened. He did not offer protection, money, contacts, or advice. After several minutes, Emily began crying. Richard moved closer. She raised one hand. "Do not fix it." He stopped. "I am not going to." She looked at him as though she did not believe him. Richard kept both hands on his knees. Emily told him about problems in her marriage. She told him she had been afraid to speak because he would investigate her husband, hire an attorney, or create a plan. Richard listened. Every instinct in him produced an action. Call someone. Review finances. Protect assets. Remove risk. He allowed each impulse to appear and pass. When Emily finished, she wiped her face. "What do you think I should do?" Richard answered honestly. "I do not know." She laughed through her tears. It was the first time she had laughed with him in years. Caroline visited 2 months later. She watched Richard move through the building. He did not carry a phone. No one followed him. People interrupted him without fear. A young resident asked him to unclog a sink. Richard left in the middle of their conversation and returned with dirty hands. Caroline stared at him. "What? You used to change clothes if someone touched your sleeve." "I remember. Now you repair toilets." "Yes." "Are you happy?" Richard considered the question. "I am not watching myself all the time. That is not what I asked. It is the closest answer I have." Caroline looked toward the entrance. "There is no lock on that door." "I know. You hated that. I still notice it. Do you want to install one?" "Sometimes." "Why do you not?" Richard looked at her. "Because wanting to feel safe and being safe are not always the same experience." Caroline said nothing. That night, after the visitors had left, Richard walked through the residence. He did not inspect the rooms. He did not test the windows. He simply turned off lights. As he passed the dining hall, he felt something rise in his chest. It was not joy in the way he had once understood joy. It was the absence of a pressure he had carried so long that he had mistaken it for responsibility. Richard whispered, "I finally have nothing to protect." A resident heard him the following night. Richard said it again, then again several nights later. Soon, people began talking. Some believed he regretted leaving his company. Others thought he was trying to convince himself that losing his status did not matter. A few worried that the former billionaire was becoming unstable. One resident said Richard probably missed his penthouse, his cars, and the authority he once carried. Another said people who had lived in luxury often romanticized simplicity until the discomfort became real. They brought their concerns to Michael. "He says it when he thinks no one is listening," the school teacher explained. "What exactly does he say?" Michael asked. "That he has nothing to protect." "Does he seem distressed?" "No. That is what is strange. He sounds happy." The mechanic shook his head. "Maybe that is how he handles regret." Michael listened. Then he called Richard into the meeting room. Several residents were present. Richard sat down. Michael looked at him. "People have heard you saying that you have nothing left to protect." Richard glanced around the room. Some residents looked concerned. Others appeared embarrassed. "It is true," he said. The teacher leaned forward. "Do you miss your former life?" "Parts of it." "Your company?" "Sometimes." "Your house?" "No." "The guards?" Richard began laughing. No one else did. He stopped. Michael asked, "What do you mean when you say you have nothing to protect?" Richard looked at his hands. "When I was wealthy, I believed protection created safety." He paused. "The more I owned, the more ways I imagined losing it. The more people loved me, the more I feared something would happen to them. The more power I had, the more people I suspected wanted it." The residents listened. "I ate meals prepared by private chefs and barely tasted them because I was watching the room. I slept behind reinforced doors and woke every hour. I had trained guards outside my house and still believed someone was coming." Richard looked toward the unlocked entrance. "Here. I sleep in a room anyone could enter." The mechanic smiled slightly. Richard continued, "I own almost nothing. No one needs to threaten me to take my position. No one needs to manipulate me for access. No one needs to study my schedule. There is nothing here that requires an army." The teacher frowned. "But you still have money." "Yes." "Your family could still be harmed." "Yes." "Your company could still fail." "Yes." then the danger did not disappear. No, Richard looked at Michael. The belief that I could eliminate it disappeared. No one spoke. Richard continued. I thought I was protecting my life. I was protecting an idea of how my life had to remain. His voice became quieter. I could not eat because the life had to remain. I could not sleep because the life had to remain. I could not let my daughters make mistakes because their lives had to remain the way I imagined. I could not let Caroline breathe because our marriage had to remain. He looked around the room. When I say I have nothing to protect, I do not mean there is nothing I love. He placed one hand over his chest. I mean, I no longer believe love requires me to stand guard over reality. The school teacher lowered his eyes. He had been the first to suggest Richard was grieving his wealth. Richard saw the change in his face. You thought I regretted leaving, Richard said. The teacher looked uncomfortable. Yes, you were concerned. I was. Thank you. The teacher raised his head. You are not angry, Richard smiled. For years, I built entire investigations from less evidence than you had. The mechanic laughed. This time, Richard joined him. That night, the residents returned to their rooms. The teacher paused beside Richard's bed. I am sorry I misunderstood you. Richard removed his shoes. You heard a sentence and completed the story. I should have asked. Yes, the teacher nodded. He turned toward his own bed. Richard lay down. The window remained unlocked. The door remained open. No guard stood outside. He closed his eyes. A sound came from the hallway. His body noticed. For one brief second, the old command appeared. Get up, check the door. Richard took one breath, then another. He remained where he was. Across the room, the teacher whispered into the darkness. Are you awake? Yes. Do you feel safe? Richard listened to the building, to the people breathing, to the absence of cameras, weapons, alarms, and guarantees. No, he said. The teacher turned toward him. Richard pulled the blanket closer and closed his eyes again. I feel free. Story 6. The Man Who Always Had Tomorrow. Michael Grant spent 40 years waiting for his life to calm down. It finally did 6 hours before he died. By every reasonable measure, Michael had lived responsibly. He had raised 3 children. He had kept a manufacturing company alive through 2 recessions. He had paid his employees when customers failed to pay him. He had cared for his mother through 7 years of dementia. He had served on the school board, coached Little League, repaired the roof of his church, and answered his phone whenever someone needed help. No one called Michael selfish. No one called him lazy. No one doubted that he meant well. Michael was always about to begin taking care of the part of his life no one else could see. He planned to slow down. He planned to spend time in silence. He planned to deal with the anger he carried toward his father. He planned to apologize to his brother. He planned to learn how to sit still without feeling guilty. He planned to ask himself why, after doing everything expected of him, he still woke some mornings with the feeling that he had forgotten something essential. He would begin when the company stabilized. Then, the company nearly failed. Michael postponed the beginning. He would begin when the children were older. Then the children became teenagers and needed more attention, not less. He would begin when his mother's condition improved. It did not improve. He would begin when the medical bills were paid. The bills were replaced by tuition payments. He would begin after his daughter's wedding. Then his son's marriage collapsed. He would begin when the family crisis passed. Another crisis arrived. Every delay had a legitimate reason. That was what made the delays so powerful. Michael did not waste his life doing nothing. He spent it doing things that mattered. There was always a person who needed him. There was always a problem with a deadline. There was always a machine that had stopped working, a relative who required advice, an employee facing eviction, or a bill that could not wait. The inner work could wait. It had no invoice. It did not call at midnight. It did not stand in his office doorway with frightened eyes. It waited politely. Year after year, it waited. Michael first met Grace Park when he was 39. She taught a weekly meditation class at a community center in Columbus, Ohio. Michael's wife, Elaine, persuaded him to attend after his physician warned that his blood pressure was climbing. Michael arrived 7 minutes late. He sat near the door. He checked his watch 3 times during the first 10 minutes. When Grace asked the group to follow the breath, Michael immediately discovered several things he needed to remember. A supplier had not returned his call. His truck needed new tires. His oldest son had borrowed a power drill and never returned it. The warehouse insurance was due next month. He opened his eyes. Everyone else appeared calm. Michael became irritated. After the session, Grace approached him. "Was that your first time? Was it obvious? You looked like someone had locked you in a room with your own mind." Michael laughed. "That is what it felt like." Grace smiled. "Then you noticed something." "I noticed that I have too much to do for this." "How much time did you lose?" 45 minutes. "Did anything collapse?" "Not today." Grace gave him a small card with the class schedule. "Come back next week." Michael placed the card in his wallet. "I will." He meant it. The following Tuesday, one of his supervisors called in sick. Michael stayed late. The Tuesday after that, Elaine's car broke down. The week after that, a customer from Indiana arrived unexpectedly. Michael missed 3 sessions, then 5. Grace's card remained in his wallet, behind his driver's license. Each time he saw it, he thought the same thing. Soon, months passed. Elaine began attending the class without him. She learned to meditate. Michael admired her discipline. He told friends that Grace's class had changed his wife. Elaine became less reactive. She slept better. She no longer followed Michael from room to room when they argued. Instead, she sometimes became quiet and waited before speaking. Michael found this unsettling. One night, after he had complained for 20 minutes about an employee, Elaine asked, "Do you want me to listen? Or do you want me to agree?" Michael stopped. "What kind of question is that?" "An honest one. I am telling you what happened. You are telling me what he did. I am trying to understand what it did inside you." Michael looked at her. "This is from the meditation class. Some of it. I knew there was a catch." Elaine laughed. Michael did not. She touched his arm. "Come with me Tuesday." "I cannot. You do not know what is happening Tuesday." "I know something will." Elaine's expression changed. Not anger, sadness. "Something always will." Michael kissed her forehead and returned to his paperwork. He told himself he would attend when the business became less demanding. The business never became less demanding. It changed the kind of demand. During difficult years, Michael worked because the company might fail. During successful years, he worked because growth required attention. When profits fell, he worked to save jobs. When profits rose, he worked to create more. There was no version of the company that did not need him. Michael secretly took pride in that. He complained about being necessary, but being necessary gave his life structure. People waited for his decisions. Machines remained silent until he approved repairs. Employees brought him problems they could not solve. His family called when they were frightened. Michael knew where to stand when someone needed something. He did not know where to stand when no one did. His younger brother, Thomas, understood this before Michael did. Thomas had left Ohio in his 20s and moved to Oregon. He worked as a carpenter, married an artist, and lived in a modest house near Eugene. Michael believed Thomas had wasted his potential. Their father had left both brothers shares in the manufacturing company. Thomas sold his portion to Michael for less than it was worth. He said he did not want the life attached to it. Michael heard that as criticism. "You think you are too good for this?" "No." "You think I enjoy every hour I spend here?" "I did not say that." "Then what are you saying?" "I am saying I do not want to spend my life maintaining something because Dad was afraid to let it end." Michael became furious. Their father had built the company from nothing. He had worked nights. He had borrowed money from relatives. He had employed families who depended on him. Michael believed Thomas was insulting everything their father had sacrificed. Thomas believed Michael was repeating it. They argued. The argument became a distance. The distance became silence. Birthdays passed with brief messages. Their mother's illness forced them into the same room occasionally, but they spoke only about medication, insurance, and schedules. Thomas once tried to address the conflict. They were standing in the parking lot of a memory care facility. "We should talk about what happened," Thomas said. Michael looked at his phone. "I have a meeting." "You always have a meeting. That does not mean the meeting is not real." "I did not say it was not real." "Then what do you want?" Thomas looked at him for a long moment. "I want my brother back." Michael felt something move in his chest. He did not have language for it. He looked at the time. "Not here." "Then where?" "Later." Thomas nodded. "Of course." He walked to his car. Michael watched him leave. For several days, he considered calling. Then his mother fell. The hospital called. The company lost a contract. His daughter announced her engagement. Life filled the space where the conversation might have happened. Michael did not call. His mother died 2 years later. At the funeral, Thomas stood across the room. They embraced. Both men began crying. For a moment, Michael thought the distance had ended. Then people approached. There were arrangements to make, papers to sign, food to distribute, a house to empty. Michael took charge. By the time everything had been handled, Thomas had returned to Oregon. Michael placed the unfinished conversation back into the future. He would visit. He would call. He would explain. Later, at 58, Michael sold the manufacturing company. The sale should have created the time he had been waiting for. Instead, it terrified him. For the first time since he was 22, no one required him at 7 in the morning. He woke on the first Monday after the sale and dressed for work out of habit. Then he remembered he no longer had an office. Elaine found him standing in the kitchen, wearing a tie. "You know you are retired." "I am aware." "Then why are you dressed?" "I have several things to handle." "What things?" Michael opened his mouth. He had no answer ready. Elaine poured coffee. "Grace still teaches on Tuesdays." Michael looked at her. "I knew you would say that, because you have been promising to return for 19 years. "I have not been promising. You kept the card." Michael touched his wallet. Grace's original card was no longer there. It had fallen apart years earlier, but Elaine had given him several replacements. One sat in his desk. One was attached to the refrigerator beneath a magnet from Niagara Falls. Another was folded inside a book Michael had never finished. "I will go," he said. "When?" "Next week." Elaine looked at him. "What is wrong with this week?" Michael felt cornered. "I have meetings with the financial advisor. On Tuesday evening." "No." "Then come." "I said I will." Elaine lowered her eyes. Michael immediately regretted his tone. He wanted to apologize. Instead, he said, "Do not make this into something." Elaine left the kitchen. Michael did not attend that week. He attended 2 months later. Grace was older. Her hair had turned silver. She recognized him immediately. "Michael Grant, you remember me? You said you would come back." Michael laughed. "Did you believe me?" "Yes." "You waited 19 years?" "No." The answer surprised him. Grace pointed toward an empty chair, but the chair did. Michael sat. The practice had not become easier. If anything, silence was louder now, that work no longer covered it. He saw Thomas in the memory care parking lot. "I want my brother back." He saw Elaine leaving the kitchen. He saw his father asleep at his desk, one hand still holding a pen. He saw every year he had described as temporary. Michael opened his eyes after 6 minutes. Grace was sitting nearby. "I cannot do this tonight." "All right, I will return." Grace nodded. Michael stood. At the door, she said, "You do not have to wait until it feels easier." "I know." "Do you?" Michael looked back. "I said I will return." He did return. 3 weeks later. Then he missed a month. He attended again. Then his grandson began having trouble at school. Michael offered to help. His son needed money for legal fees. Michael handled it. A former employee asked him to invest in a new company. Michael reviewed the proposal. Retirement became another form of work. The difference was that no one forced him to do it. Elaine saw that clearly. "You keep rebuilding the same life," she told him. "I am helping people." "Yes." "Would you rather I refuse?" "No." "Then what is the problem? You do not know how to help without disappearing into the helping." Michael became defensive. "That sounds like something Grace would say." "It sounds like something your wife is saying." Michael looked away. Elaine died before him. Cancer arrived quickly. By the time doctors found it, it had spread. For the first time in their marriage, Michael could not solve the problem. He researched treatments. He called specialists. He arranged consultations at 3 hospitals. Elaine agreed to some interventions and refused others. Michael interpreted every refusal as surrender. "You are not fighting," he told her. "I am dying. Do not say that." "It is true. There are trials." "I know. There are new drugs." "I know. Then how can you stop?" Elaine took his hand. "I am not stopping." "That is exactly what you are doing." "No. I am finally paying attention to what is happening." Michael pulled his hand away. He left the room. 10 minutes later, he returned. Elaine was looking through the window. "I am sorry," he said. She nodded. "I do not know how to do this." "I know. I cannot lose you." "I know. What am I supposed to do?" "Stay." Michael sat beside her. For 20 minutes, he stayed. Then his phone rang. A lawyer needed an answer regarding an investment property. Michael answered. Elaine died 4 weeks later. After the funeral, Michael found one of Grace's meditation cards in Elaine's nightstand. On the back, Elaine had written a sentence. "Do not wait until nothing needs you." Michael carried the card in his wallet. He began attending Grace's class regularly. For almost 6 months, he arrived every Tuesday. He sat through grief. He sat through anger. He sat through the impulse to check his phone. He learned a practice of extending goodwill. Grace asked the group to bring one person to mind and silently repeat simple wishes. May you be safe. May you be at peace. May you be free from unnecessary suffering. Michael chose Elaine. The words broke him. He left the room before the session ended. Grace found him outside. "I cannot wish peace for someone who is dead." "Why not?" "Because I do not know where she is." "Then wish it without knowing." "That feels dishonest." "Does love require certainty before it can move?" Michael looked away. Grace waited. He returned the following week. He practiced again. This time, when he brought Elaine to mind, he completed the phrases. May you be safe. May you be at peace. May you be free. Something softened. Michael began to understand why people returned to the practice. Not because every session felt good. Many did not. They returned because the mind revealed what busyness kept hidden. Michael planned to call Thomas. He wrote the reminder on a piece of paper. Call Tom. The note remained beside his phone for 3 weeks. Each day, Michael saw it. Each day, he found a reason to wait. He wanted to know exactly what to say. He wanted enough time for a long conversation. He wanted to feel less defensive. He wanted to be certain Thomas still wanted the call. One morning, Michael placed the note in a drawer. He told himself he would call after the holidays. Before the holidays, Thomas suffered a stroke. He survived, but speech became difficult. Michael flew to Oregon. Thomas lay in a rehabilitation hospital. His right side was partially paralyzed. Michael sat beside him. Neither brother knew how to begin. Thomas tried to speak. The words came slowly. You took your time. Michael laughed once. Then he began crying. Thomas cried too. Michael reached for his hand. I am sorry. Thomas squeezed weakly. I should have called. Yes. I thought there would be time. Thomas looked at him. There was. Michael lowered his head. The words hurt because they were true. There had been time. Years of it. Time had not been missing. Michael had been spending it elsewhere. He stayed in Oregon for 2 weeks. They spoke in short conversations. Thomas tired easily. Michael apologized for treating a different choice as betrayal. Thomas apologized for judging Michael's loyalty to their father. Neither man resolved everything. They did not need to. A door that had remained closed for decades opened enough for both of them to stand inside it. Michael returned to Ohio, determined to stop postponing what mattered. He reduced his commitments. He declined investment requests. He turned off his phone during meditation. He visited his children without trying to solve their lives. He practiced goodwill each morning. For nearly a year, he kept the promise. Then, his own diagnosis arrived. Pancreatic cancer. Advanced. The physician spoke carefully. Treatment might extend his life. It would not cure him. Michael listened, without interrupting. He thought of Elaine. He thought of all the plans he had made for later. "How long?" he asked. The physician gave him a range. Michael disliked ranges. He wanted a number. The physician could not provide one. Michael began treatment. He approached illness the way he had approached business. He created schedules. He tracked laboratory results. He organized medications. He researched nutrition. He joined an online support group and became one of its most active members. Within months, he was advising newly diagnosed patients. He helped one man find a specialist. He raised money for another family. He built spreadsheets comparing clinical trials. People praised his courage. Michael was postponing again. This time, he postponed dying. Grace visited him at home. His body had become thinner. Folders of medical information covered the dining table. "You are working," she said. "I am staying informed. You are running a small cancer organization from your living room. People need help." "Yes." Michael smiled weakly. "You sound like Elaine. I always liked her." Michael looked at the folders. Grace sat across from him. "What happens when there is no one left to help?" "There is always someone." "That is not an answer." Michael's face hardened. "You think I am avoiding something?" "Yes. I meditate every morning." "For how long?" 10 minutes. "How long do you research treatments?" Michael did not answer. Grace looked at him gently. "Practice can become another appointment you complete before returning to avoidance." "That is unfair." "It may be." Michael pushed one folder away. "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing. That is not useful." "I know." Grace placed her hands on the table. "Can you sit here without improving anything?" Michael looked toward the folders. "People are waiting for information. Can they wait 20 minutes? Michael felt panic, not fear of death, fear of becoming unnecessary. If he stopped helping, what remained? A sick man in a quiet house. A vidova, a brother with unfinished words. A father whose children were already learning to live without him. "I do not know who I am if I stop," he said. Grace nodded. "That is what has been waiting." Michael's eyes filled. He had expected judgment. Grace gave him none. She moved the folders to another chair. They sat at the empty table. Michael lasted 7 minutes before speaking. "I am afraid. I know. I thought I had more time. I know. I wasted so much." Grace did not tell him he had wasted nothing. She did not rewrite his life into a comforting story. Michael had delayed things that mattered. Some opportunities were gone. Elaine would never hear the apology he had meant to offer for the years he had been present in body and absent in attention. His father was dead. His mother was dead. Some conversations could no longer happen. The cost was real. Grace allowed it to remain real. Then she asked, "What is still possible?" Michael looked around the room. The question frightened him because the answer was small. No company to save. No marriage to repair. No decade of practice waiting ahead. Only this day, this body, this breath, the people still alive. Michael called his children. He asked them to visit together. When they arrived, he did not present instructions about finances. He did not begin with the will. He told them he was afraid. They had never heard him say those words. His oldest son looked down. His daughter moved closer. His youngest child, Daniel, began crying immediately. Michael apologized, not for dying, for making usefulness the price of closeness. "I thought loving you meant being ready with an answer," he said. His daughter took his hand. "We needed you to stay after you gave it." Michael nodded. He wanted to explain. He did not. He listened. They spoke for hours. Some memories were warm. Others were painful. Michael did not defend himself. When exhaustion came, he asked them to continue another day. They did. The treatment eventually stopped working. Michael entered hospice care at home. Grace visited every few days. Thomas called from Oregon when his speech allowed it. The brothers no longer needed long conversations. Sometimes they remained on the phone without speaking. Michael's final decline came quickly. One morning, he could no longer stand. By afternoon, his breathing became labored. His children gathered around the bed. A hospice nurse adjusted his medication. Michael drifted in and out of awareness. Near sunset, he opened his eyes. "Grace," he whispered. His daughter called her. Grace arrived 40 minutes later. Michael's breathing had become shallow and uneven. She sat beside the bed. "How is it?" she asked. Michael attempted a smile. "Worse." "Are you in pain?" "Yes." "Are you frightened?" "Yes." His children watched from across the room. Grace leaned closer. "Is there anything in you that can still practice?" Michael closed his eyes. For a moment, she thought he had fallen asleep. Then he whispered, "I waited too long." Grace took his hand. "Yes." His daughter looked at her sharply. She had expected reassurance. Grace continued, "You waited a long time." Michael began to cry. The tears moved slowly toward his ears. Grace did not wipe them away. "Is the door closed?" he asked. "No." "How do you know?" "Because you are asking." Michael's breathing caught. "What do I do?" Grace guided him toward the practice he had learned years earlier. Not a complicated meditation, not a philosophical teaching. A simple movement of the heart. "Bring your children to mind. They are here. I know." Michael opened his eyes. His 3 children moved closer. Grace spoke softly. "Let the heart wish them well, without trying to control what happens next." Michael looked at each of them. His oldest son, his daughter, Daniel. His grandchildren appeared on a tablet held near the bed. Michael tried to speak. No words came. Grace repeated the phrases. "May they be safe." Michael's lips moved. "May they be at peace." He breathed with difficulty. "May they be free from unnecessary suffering." Michael's daughter pressed his hand to her face. Grace continued, "Now include Thomas." Michael closed his eyes. His brother's face appeared on the tablet from Oregon. Thomas struggled to speak. "Here," he said. Michael heard him. A sound left Michael's throat. It might have been a laugh. It might have been a sob. Grace repeated the wishes. Michael followed as much as his breath allowed. Then Grace said, "Include Elaine." Michael's face changed. For years, her name had carried loss. Now something gentler appeared. He whispered, "I am sorry." Grace did not tell him. Elaine forgave him. She did not claim to know what death allowed. She said, "Let the apology become love." Michael breathed. "May she be at peace." The room became still. Grace waited. Then she said, "Now include yourself." Michael opened his eyes. Confusion crossed his face. He had spent his life extending effort outward. Employees, children, parents, customers, strangers. Even during illness, he had turned toward others because turning inward felt like abandonment. "Me?" he asked. "Yes." Michael looked frightened. Grace spoke the words for him. "May I be held with kindness." His lips moved. "May I be free from fear." Michael inhaled sharply. His chest trembled. "May whatever I am carrying find rest." He began to weep again. This time, the tears did not carry regret alone. For the first time, Michael allowed his own life to be included among the lives he had spent decades trying to protect. His children repeated the phrases. Thomas repeated what he could through the phone. The hospice nurse stood in the doorway. No one tried to stop what was happening. No one checked the time. Michael's breathing gradually changed. The struggle did not disappear. His illness remained. His body was still dying, but the panic beneath the breath began to loosen. His shoulders lowered. His hands opened. The man who had always been reaching toward the next emergency had nowhere else to go. Grace remained beside him. After several minutes, Michael whispered, "This is what Elaine meant." "What did she mean?" Grace asked. "Stay." Grace nodded. "Yes." Michael looked toward his children. "I am here." His daughter leaned over him. "We know." He remained awake for another hour. He spoke only a few times. He asked Daniel to open the window. He asked Thomas to stay on the call. He asked Grace to repeat the practice. She did. "May you be safe. May you be at peace. May you be free." The light outside faded. Michael's breathing became softer. His daughter placed her hand over his heart. For the first time in his life, no unfinished obligation pulled him toward tomorrow. No meeting waited. No crisis required management. No one needed him to become useful. His family sat around him. Thomas remained on the screen. Grace repeated the final phrase, "May whatever you are carrying find rest." Michael exhaled. His hand loosened inside his daughter's hand. He had waited almost his entire life to begin. The final thing he did was begin. Story 7. The boy who gave away everything. The poorest boy in California handed a fistful of dirt to a stranger, and the stranger received it as though it were gold. His name was Samuel Turner. He was 9 years old when his family arrived at a migrant camp outside Bakersfield in the summer of 1936. They had come from Oklahoma in a truck that coughed smoke whenever the road climbed. The truck carried 5 people, 2 blankets, 1 cooking pot, a wooden box of clothing, and everything Samuel's father had been unable to sell before the bank took their farm. They had left behind a house with a red door. They had left behind 3 dead fields. They had left behind the grave of Samuel's baby sister. His mother did not turn around when they drove away. His father looked back once. After that, he spoke very little. California was supposed to have work. The handbills said fruit hung from trees until branches bent beneath the weight. They said a man willing to work could feed his family. They did not say how many men would arrive believing the same promise. Samuel's father stood each morning beside hundreds of others, while farm supervisors selected workers. Some days, he was chosen. Most days, he was not. When he returned to the camp with empty hands, Samuel's mother never asked whether he had found work. She could tell by the way he walked. The family slept beneath a shelter made from canvas, rope, and boards collected from the roadside. When it rained, water entered through the roof. When the wind rose, dust entered through everything. It settled in their food. It covered their blankets. It collected in the corners of Samuel's eyes while he slept. The camp children made games from what the adults considered useless. They rolled discarded tires. They built forts from produce crates. They drew roads through the dirt and pushed bottle caps along them as though the caps were automobiles. Samuel owned a glass marble with a blue line twisting through its center. It was the only object he had brought from Oklahoma. His older brother, Henry, had given it to him before joining a freight train heading north to look for work. "Keep it until I come back," Henry had said. Henry had been gone for 7 months. No letter had arrived. Samuel carried the marble in his pocket every day. Sometimes, he held it tightly enough to leave a circle in his palm. The adults in the camp had learned not to promise children anything. Food might arrive. Work might appear. Rain might come. A missing brother might return. The adults used words like perhaps and soon. The children understood what those words meant. Do not depend on it. One Tuesday morning, a truck entered the camp carrying sacks of flour, canned beans, soap, and medicine. People began moving before the driver stopped. Relief workers climbed down and unfolded tables. A nurse opened a metal case. 2 men carried wooden crates toward the center of the camp. A woman wrote names on a clipboard. Samuel's mother took his younger sister, Ruth, by the hand and joined the line. Samuel followed. His father did not. He sat outside their shelter, repairing a broken boot with wire. "Come with us," Samuel's mother said. "I am not taking charity. We have no flour. I will find work tomorrow. You said that yesterday. Samuel's father pulled the wire tighter. His hand slipped. Blood appeared across one finger. He wrapped the finger in a piece of cloth and continued working. Samuel's mother watched him. Then she turned away. The line moved slowly. Each family received what the relief workers could spare: a sack of flour, 2 cans of beans, a bar of soap. Children received a cup of milk if they were small enough. Samuel stood beside his mother and watched everything placed into other people's hands. He noticed how people looked away when they received food. He noticed how quickly they whispered thank you. He noticed that the relief workers smiled carefully, as though kindness offered too brightly might become another form of humiliation. Near the final truck stood an older man wearing plain grey clothing. His head was closely shaved. A small wooden pendant hung from his neck. He was not distributing food. He moved through the camp, carrying an empty metal bowl. Samuel watched him stop beside an old woman who had been coughing for weeks. The man sat beside her. He did not touch her. He listened. The woman spoke for several minutes. The man remained with her until she stopped. Then he stood and continued walking. Samuel had never seen anyone move that slowly through a place where everyone was in a hurry to survive. "Who is that?" Samuel asked. His mother looked. "A monk." "What kind?" "I do not know." "What is he doing?" "Listening, I suppose." "Does he have food?" "Pay attention to the line." Samuel kept watching. The monk stopped beside a man with one arm. He knelt to speak with him. He stopped near a crying child and waited until the child looked up. He stopped beside Samuel's father. Samuel became nervous. His father did not like strangers asking questions. He disliked religious men even more. After the bank took the farm, a preacher had told him that hardship was part of God's plan. Samuel's father had asked whether God planned to pay the mortgage. He never returned to church. The monk stood several feet away from him. Samuel's father continued repairing the boot. The monk said something Samuel could not hear. His father shook his head. The monk waited. His father spoke without looking up. The monk listened. Minutes passed. Samuel expected his father to become angry. Instead, the boot slowly lowered into his lap. The 2 men remained there, one sitting and one standing, saying nothing. Then the monk bowed his head and walked away. Samuel's father watched him go. The line moved forward. Samuel received a cup of milk. He drank half, then handed the cup to Ruth. She finished it without asking whether he wanted more. Samuel did want more. He said nothing. His mother collected flour, beans, and soap. The relief worker apologized because there was no cooking oil left. Samuel's mother thanked her anyway. As they returned toward their shelter, the monk walked in their direction. He carried the metal bowl in both hands. Samuel could now see that it was not completely empty. Someone had placed a piece of bread inside. A woman had given him an apple. Several dried beans rested at the bottom. "Why are people giving him food?" Samuel asked. His mother adjusted the flour sack against her hip. "Perhaps that is how his order lives. But they need the food. People decide what they can give." Samuel looked at the bowl. He felt something he did not understand. The feeling arrived suddenly and completely. He wanted to place something inside it. The desire was so strong that he stopped walking. His mother took several steps before noticing. "Samuel." He searched his pockets. One held a bent nail. The other held Henry's marble. Samuel closed his hand around it. The marble was the only thing he owned. He imagined dropping it into the monk's bowl. The thought frightened him. Henry had told him to keep it. Giving it away would feel like admitting his brother was not coming back. Samuel removed his hand. "I do not have anything," he said. His mother looked toward the monk. "You do not need to give him anything." "I want to." "Then offer him a kind word." Samuel watched the monk approach. A kind word did not feel like enough. He looked around. The camp contained broken boards, empty cans, torn cloth, stones, and dust. Nothing belonged to him. Nothing seemed worthy of giving. The monk was almost beside them. Samuel stepped toward him, then stopped. The metal bowl reflected the sunlight. The bread and apple inside it seemed like gifts from people who had something real to offer. Samuel lowered his eyes. The ground beneath his feet was dry and cracked. He remembered the fields in Oklahoma. Before the drought, his father had shown him how to hold soil. Good earth should remain together when pressed, his father said. It should smell alive. By the final year, the soil had become powder. It slipped through every hand. Samuel bent down. He gathered a handful of California dirt. His mother stared at him. "What are you doing?" Samuel did not answer. He pressed the dirt between his palms. He imagined it was flour, not the small sack his mother carried. A great field of wheat, enough to make bread for every family in the camp. He imagined rain falling over the field. He imagined his father working without having to wait for another man to choose him. He imagined Henry walking over the hill with a full stomach and clean clothes. He imagined Ruth drinking as much milk as she wanted. The dirt became warm in his hands. The monk reached them. Samuel stepped into his path. The man stopped. Up close, he appeared older than Samuel had expected. Lines surrounded his eyes. His face did not carry the careful smile of the relief workers. He simply looked at Samuel. Samuel held out both hands. The dirt rested in his palms. The monk looked down at it. Samuel's courage disappeared. He suddenly saw the gift, as the monk must see it. A child offering dirt to a man carrying food. It was foolish, worse than foolish. It might seem like an insult. Samuel began pulling his hands back. "I am sorry." The monk lowered the bowl. Samuel stopped. The man held it beneath Samuel's hands. He waited. Samuel looked at his mother. She did not move. He looked at the monk. "What is it?" the man asked. Samuel swallowed. "Flour." The monk looked again at the dirt. Samuel's face burned. "I know it is not," he said quickly, "but I thought it could be. I thought if I had flour, I would give you flour." The monk held the bowl steady. "Then flour is what you are giving." Samuel stared at him. The monk did not laugh. He did not glance at Samuel's mother as adults often did when a child said something impossible. He waited as though Samuel's decision mattered. Samuel opened his hands. The dirt fell into the bowl. Some landed on the bread. Some covered the apple. Samuel gasped. He had ruined the food. "I am sorry," he said again. His mother reached forward. "We can remove it." The monk gently raised the bowl. "No." He looked at Samuel. "This belongs here." Samuel did not understand. "It is dirt. It is everything you had in your hands." The monk used one finger to move the dirt from the bread. He did it carefully, not with disgust, not as though cleaning away something worthless. He placed the dirt in one side of the bowl. Then he broke the bread in half. He offered one piece to Samuel. Samuel shook his head. "I gave it to you." "Yes. You cannot give it back." "Why not?" "Because then I did not give anything." The monk considered this. He placed the bread back into the bowl. "You are right." Samuel felt proud and disappointed at the same time. The monk bowed deeply, not the small nod adults gave children. He bent from the waist, as though Samuel were someone important. "Thank you," he said. Samuel had been thanked before, for carrying water, for watching Ruth, for completing work. No one had ever thanked him for giving something that appeared to have no value. The monk walked on. Samuel remained where he was. His hands were empty. The emptiness felt different from hunger. It felt larger. His mother touched his shoulder. That was a strange thing to do. Samuel looked at her. Was it bad? No. Was it stupid? His mother watched the monk move through the camp. No. What was it? She adjusted the sack of flour. I think it was a gift. That evening, Samuel's father returned from the workers' line with no job. His mother cooked beans. She mixed flour with water and made small pieces of flatbread in the pan. There was not enough for everyone to eat until full. There was enough for no one to go without. Samuel told his father about the monk. He expected to be mocked. His father listened. You gave him dirt. I pretended it was flour. Did he know? Yes. And he took it? Yes. Samuel's father looked toward the road. What kind of fool accepts dirt as flour? Samuel's mother answered before Samuel could. The kind who understands what was being offered. His father looked at her. She placed a piece of bread in front of him. He did not speak again. The monk remained in the camp for 6 weeks. His name was Thomas Mori. He was born in San Francisco to Japanese immigrants and had studied at a Buddhist temple after the death of his wife. He had come south with a relief organization to help establish a medical station for migrant families. Thomas did not preach. He repaired tents. He carried water. He sat with the dying. He helped the nurse clean wounds. Every morning, he walked through the camp with his bowl. People gave what they could. Some gave food. Some gave coins. Some gave nothing. Thomas treated every person the same. Samuel followed him whenever his mother allowed it. He asked questions constantly. Why do you carry a bowl if you can work for food? To remember that I depend on others. Is that good? It is true. Why did you take the dirt? Because you gave it. But it was not useful. Thomas looked at him. Was giving it useful to you? Samuel thought. Yes. Then it was useful. What did you do with it? I kept it. Samuel did not believe him. Thomas reached into a cloth pouch beneath his shirt. He removed a small folded paper. Inside it rested a pinch of the dirt. Samuel looked toward the metal bowl. Where is the rest? In the ground. You put dirt back in the dirt? Yes. That makes no sense. Thomas smiled. Most gifts return to where they began. Samuel frowned. Then why give them? Because the giver does not return unchanged. Samuel did not understand that answer either. He remembered it. One morning, Thomas found Samuel sitting alone near an irrigation ditch. The other children were playing nearby. Samuel held Henry's marble. Is that yours? Thomas asked. My brother gave it to me. Where is he? Samuel looked toward the railroad tracks. I do not know. Thomas sat beside him. Samuel rolled the marble between his fingers. Do you think he is dead? I do not know. My father thinks he left us. Did he say that? No. What does your mother think? She says he will write. What do you think? Samuel closed his fist around the marble. I think if I stop waiting, he will come back, and I will miss him. Thomas nodded. They sat quietly. Samuel looked at him. Do monks have brothers? Some do. Do you? I had one. Did he die? Yes. Did you keep something of his? For many years. What? His pocket watch. Where is it? I gave it to his son. Samuel held the marble tighter. Did that feel like losing him again? Yes. Then why did you do it? Because love had become confused with holding. Samuel looked at the marble. Thomas continued. The watch was not my brother, but I was asking it to keep him alive. Did it? No. Samuel placed the marble back in his pocket. He was not ready to release it. Thomas did not ask him to. Several days later, a fire started at the far end of the camp. A cooking flame caught a piece of hanging cloth. The wind carried sparks from one shelter to another. People shouted. Families ran for water. Samuel's mother grabbed Ruth. His father joined a line of men passing buckets. Samuel looked toward their shelter. The wooden box containing their clothes was inside. So was the photograph of Henry. Samuel ran toward it. Someone caught him from behind. It was Thomas. Let me go. No. Our things are inside. The fire is moving. My brother's picture. Thomas held him. Samuel kicked. He struck Thomas's arms. The shelter caught fire. The canvas roof collapsed. The wooden box disappeared beneath it. Samuel screamed. His father reached them and pulled Samuel away. The family lost almost everything. Their blankets, their clothing, the cooking pot, the photograph, the letter from the bank, even the red ribbon Ruth's mother tied in her hair on Sundays. Samuel still had the marble. It had remained in his pocket. That night, families shared blankets. The relief workers brought food. Thomas sat with Samuel's family. Samuel's father stared toward the blackened ground. I should have built the shelter farther apart. No one is blaming you, Samuel's mother said. I knew the wind was dangerous. You did not start the fire. I should have protected what we had. Thomas listened. Samuel's father turned toward him. You say people depend on each other. Yes. Then why does everything disappear? Thomas did not answer quickly. Samuel's father continued. We worked for the farm. It disappeared. We crossed half the country. Work disappeared. My oldest son disappeared. Now this. His voice broke. What is a man supposed to do? Stand here with his hands open while the world takes everything. Thomas looked at Samuel, then at his father. No. What then? Learn what the hands are for. Samuel's father laughed bitterly. That sounds like something a man says when he has never had to feed children. Thomas removed the cloth pouch from his neck. He unfolded the paper containing Samuel's dirt. He placed it in the father's palm. I had a wife, Thomas said. I had a home. I had plans that seemed permanent. Samuel's father looked at the dirt. Thomas continued, I could not prevent losing them. Then you understand. I understand that a closed hand cannot stop loss. Samuel's father's fingers began curling. Thomas gently touched them. It only prevents anything new from entering. The father looked toward the families who had shared blankets. A woman approached, carrying clothing. Another brought a cooking pot. A man Samuel's father barely knew placed work boots beside him. The boots were worn but strong. No one made a speech. No one called it charity. They placed the objects down and returned to their own families. Samuel's father looked at the gifts. His hand opened. The dirt remained in his palm. The following morning, a farm supervisor arrived, seeking 20 workers. Samuel's father joined the line. This time, when another man was chosen before him, he did not lower his head. When his turn came, the supervisor asked whether he had harvesting experience. Samuel's father answered yes. The supervisor selected him. He returned to the family holding a paper with the farm's address. For the first time in months, Samuel saw him smile. Thomas left the camp at the end of the 6th week. Families gathered near the relief truck. The old woman who had been coughing gave him an orange. The one-armed man gave him a button, carved from bone. The nurse gave him fresh bandages for the road. Samuel stood at the edge of the group, with one hand inside his pocket. Thomas approached him. You are not saying goodbye. Samuel looked down. Are you coming back? I do not know. Then I do not want to say it. Thomas nodded. He began walking toward the truck. Samuel felt the marble in his hand. The blue line inside it caught the sunlight. He remembered Henry placing it in his palm. Keep it until I come back. Samuel ran toward Thomas. Wait. Thomas turned. Samuel held out the marble. The monk looked at it. This is not dirt, he said. No. This matters to you. Yes. Then you do not have to give it. Samuel's hand trembled. I know. Why are you offering it? Samuel looked toward the railroad tracks. Because I thought keeping it would bring my brother back. Thomas waited. It did not. No. Samuel swallowed. But I still love him. Yes. Even if I do not have it. Yes. Samuel placed the marble in Thomas's hand. Thomas closed his fingers around it. Then he opened them again. I cannot accept this. Samuel's face fell. Why? Because it was given to you with a promise. The promise is broken. You do not know that. He has been gone 7 months. Thomas looked toward Samuel's father. The man stood several yards away. His face had become pale. Someone was approaching from the main road. A young man carried a canvas bag over one shoulder. He walked with a limp. Samuel turned. For a moment, he did not recognize him. Henry had lost weight. His hair was longer. A scar crossed his forehead. But the way he lifted one hand had not changed. Samuel stopped breathing. Henry smiled. I told you to keep that. Samuel looked at the marble in Thomas's palm. Then he ran. He struck Henry so hard that both brothers nearly fell. Henry held him. Samuel buried his face against his brother's shirt. His mother screamed. Ruth began crying because everyone else was crying. Their father crossed the distance slowly. He stopped in front of Henry. For several seconds, neither moved. Then the father pulled both sons into his arms. Thomas remained beside the truck. The marble lay in his open hand. Later, Henry explained that he had been injured while working near Sacramento. His bag had been stolen. He had spent weeks in a charity hospital and months working his way south. He had written twice. The letters had never reached the moving camp. He had returned not because Samuel kept the marble. He returned because he had survived. That evening, the family ate together beneath a borrowed shelter. Henry described freight trains, orchards, and men who disappeared between towns. Samuel listened with the marble in his hand. Thomas had returned it before leaving. Samuel no longer held it tightly. Years later, Samuel could still remember the exact weight of the dirt he had placed inside the monk's bowl. He remembered how foolish he felt. He remembered the dirt falling over the bread. He remembered Thomas bowing as though a 9-year-old child in a migrant camp had given him something worthy of honor. When Samuel became an adult, he worked in agriculture. He began as a field hand. Then he managed crews. Eventually, he purchased a small farm of his own. He paid workers by the hour instead of by the basket. He built clean housing near the fields. He kept a kitchen open during harvest season, where any worker could eat, whether there was enough work that day or not. When people asked why he spent money on things other growers considered unnecessary, Samuel gave different answers. Sometimes he said hungry people could not work safely. Sometimes he said dignity made better workers. Sometimes he said no man should have to refuse food to prove he was still a man. He never told them the first reason. He kept it inside a small wooden box on his desk. The box contained a blue glass marble. Beside it rested a folded piece of paper. Inside the paper was a handful of dry California soil. Every year, before the first harvest, Samuel opened the box. He poured the dirt into his palms. He remembered being 9 years old. He remembered having nothing. He remembered wanting to give. Then he walked outside, opened his hands, and let the soil fall back into the field. Story 8. The Man Who Could Not Undo the Fire. 35 people died at a wedding because Gabriel Cross wanted his mother to smile again. She smiled when she heard the news. Gabriel never did. He was 14 when his father died in eastern Kentucky. Robert Cross had owned a small construction company, several acres of land, and the house where Gabriel had been born. The business was not large, but it was enough. Robert employed 6 men. He paid his debts. He kept food on the table. He had promised Gabriel that one day the company would belong to him. Robert's older brother, Calvin, handled the legal paperwork after the funeral. Calvin told Gabriel's mother, Maria, that the company owed more money than anyone had known. He said the bank would take the equipment. He said the land had been used as collateral. He said Robert had signed documents giving Calvin control if anything happened to him. Maria did not believe him. She hired an attorney. The attorney required money she did not have. Calvin produced signatures. He produced contracts. He produced witnesses. Within 6 months, Calvin owned the company, the trucks, the land, and the house. Maria and Gabriel were allowed to remain in a small trailer near the edge of the property. Calvin called it generosity. Maria called it theft. Gabriel left school and began working for his uncle. He repaired equipment that had once belonged to his father. He loaded trucks his father had purchased. He watched Calvin's sons drive vehicles. Gabriel had learned to operate as a child. They referred to him as the hired boy. At night, Maria listed everything that had been taken: the house, the company, the land, the future. She repeated the list until Gabriel knew it better than his own name. Her grief changed slowly. At first, she cried. Then she stopped. Her sadness hardened into concentration. She collected copies of documents. She wrote dates in notebooks. She followed Calvin's business deals. She knew which equipment he sold and which contracts he won. Every success became proof that he was living the life Robert had intended for Gabriel. Maria did not teach her son to grieve. She taught him to remember. When you are older, she told him, you will make this right. Gabriel was 16 the first time she said it. He had come home after Calvin's oldest son struck him in front of the workers. Gabriel's lip was bleeding. Maria cleaned the cut. "You will not always be weak," she said. Gabriel looked away. He thinks this belongs to him. It does belong to him. Maria gripped his chin and turned his face toward her. "No." Her voice was quiet. "That is what they need you to believe." Gabriel began carrying her anger because she no longer appeared strong enough to carry it alone. He stopped thinking about what he wanted. Wanting seemed childish. His father was dead. His mother was humiliated. His uncle had stolen everything. Gabriel's life had one direction: make it right. At 18, he left Kentucky. Maria told Calvin that Gabriel had found work in Ohio. That was partly true. He worked nights at a metal fabrication plant. During the day, he trained with a man named Earl Voss. Earl had spent years in prison for manufacturing illegal explosives. He had served with a demolition unit in Vietnam and returned with skills no construction company wanted to ask too many questions about. He taught Gabriel how pressure moved through a structure. He taught him how a small charge could direct a larger force. He taught him how fire traveled through ventilation systems. He taught him how ordinary materials became weapons when arranged with patience. Gabriel learned quickly. He told Earl he wanted to work in commercial demolition. Earl did not believe him. "You look at every building like somebody inside owes you money," he said. Gabriel denied it. Earl continued teaching him anyway. 2 years passed. Gabriel returned to Kentucky with stronger hands, less softness in his face, and a plan he had not fully admitted to himself. Calvin's youngest son, Matthew, was getting married. The reception would be held inside a renovated event hall owned by the family. Nearly everyone connected to Calvin's business would attend. Contractors, investors, local officials, friends who had helped him take control after Robert's death. Maria knew the guest list. She knew the date. She knew which entrance the caterers would use. She placed the invitation in front of Gabriel. "They will all be there." Gabriel looked at it. His cousin Matthew had been 9 when Robert died. He had not signed any document. He had not taken the house. He had grown up, benefiting from what his father had done, but he had not created it. Gabriel remembered playing basketball with him before the funeral divided the family. "This is his wedding," Gabriel said. Maria's face did not change. "It is a celebration paid for with your father's life. Matthew did not kill him. He lives in your house. It was not his decision. He never gave it back." Gabriel looked at his mother. He saw the trailer, the years of work, the notebooks filled with dates. He saw the woman she had been before Robert died. He wanted to return that woman to her. He wanted to do one thing powerful enough to erase every year she had been forced to bow her head. Maria touched the invitation. They need to understand what they did. Gabriel knew what she meant. He also knew she would never say the words directly. She did not need to. Her rage had lived inside him for 6 years. It already knew what to do. Gabriel entered the event hall 2 nights before the wedding. He had worked on the building during its renovation and knew where the electrical conduits ran. He knew which doors would be locked during the reception. He knew where decorative fabric would be hung. He told himself the fire would create panic. He told himself people would escape. He told himself the building would be destroyed and no one would die. He did not believe that last part. He continued anyway. On the wedding night, Gabriel sat alone in his truck several miles away. He held a radio receiver. At 8:42, he pressed the switch. He expected to feel power. He felt nothing. The first report reached him through a local emergency channel. Fire at the Caldwell Event Center. Multiple occupants trapped. Second alarm requested. Gabriel listened. More units were called. Then ambulances. Then every available responder in the county. The dispatcher's voice changed. People were still inside. A stairwell had become impassable. A side exit had failed to open. The roof was unstable. Gabriel drove toward the hall. He stopped when he saw emergency vehicles. He could not get closer. Families stood behind police lines. A woman screamed Matthew's name. Gabriel recognized her as the bride's mother. Firefighters carried people out. Some were moving, others were not. Gabriel watched a paramedic cover one body, then another. He remained in the truck until morning. 35 people died. Matthew died. His wife died. 2 children died. A server who had taken an extra shift died. A musician died while trying to open a blocked exit. Calvin survived because he had stepped outside to answer a phone call. Gabriel had destroyed the building. He had not destroyed the man he blamed. He returned to the trailer after sunrise. Maria was awake. The news played on television. The death count was still rising. She looked at Gabriel. Neither spoke. Then Maria stood. She crossed the room and placed both hands on his face. For the first time in years, she smiled. "They know now," she said. Gabriel pulled away. "Know what?" "What it feels like." He stared at her. 35 people were dead. Maria was smiling. The truth entered him completely. He had not returned his mother to the woman she had been. He had followed her into the place grief had made inside her. He turned toward the bathroom and vomited. For several days, Gabriel did not sleep. The dead appeared whenever he closed his eyes. Not as bodies, as people before the fire. Matthew straightening his tie. The bride speaking to her mother. Children reaching for cake. The musician adjusting a microphone. The server checking tables. Gabriel imagined every ordinary action that had occurred before he pressed the switch. He had turned those actions into final moments. The police questioned him because he had worked on the building. Gabriel answered calmly. He had prepared for that. His equipment was hidden. His truck had been parked beyond the range of nearby cameras. Earl had taught him how to leave little evidence. The investigation eventually focused on faulty wiring and fire code violations. Calvin's company had cut costs during the renovation. The blocked exit had been reported before. The electrical system had known defects. Officials called the tragedy a chain of negligence. Gabriel knew the chain had ended in his hand. Maria began talking about filing a claim against Calvin. She said the fire would expose his corruption. She said Robert would finally be avenged. Gabriel stopped listening. He left Kentucky again. This time, he did not tell her where he was going. He drove west until his money was nearly gone. He worked construction jobs under different names. He avoided churches because he could not bear the word forgiveness. He avoided alcohol because he was afraid of what he might confess. He avoided relationships because every kind person appeared to him as someone whose life could be destroyed by standing too close. The guilt did not remain inside his thoughts. It entered his body. His back tightened. His hands shook. He lost weight. He woke biting his tongue. He heard fire alarms inside ordinary sounds. A truck reversing. A microwave timer. A child laughing too loudly in a restaurant. Every sound returned him to the radio. Multiple occupants trapped. Gabriel began searching for someone who could tell him what to do with an act that could not be repaired. He visited a priest in St. Louis. The priest encouraged him to confess to the authorities. Gabriel left before the conversation ended. He visited a minister in Colorado. The minister told him that no sin exceeded God's mercy. Gabriel became angry. Mercy sounded like an escape. 35 people had not been given one. He attended a support group for veterans, even though he had never served. He listened to men describe actions they regretted. He envied them because war had given their guilt a context. Gabriel had created his own battlefield. He had chosen the date. He had chosen the building. He had pressed the switch. A woman at a homeless shelter in New Mexico noticed him reading a flyer about a rehabilitation center in northern Arizona. The center worked with former gang members, addicts, violent offenders, and people leaving prison. It was run by a man named Martin Hale. Martin had spent years studying contemplative practice and restorative justice after serving a sentence for armed robbery. People said he could work with men no one else could reach. Gabriel took the flyer. He drove to the address. The center stood on land several miles outside Flagstaff. It included a kitchen, a dormitory, workshops, and several unfinished stone buildings. Men worked throughout the property. Some repaired vehicles. Some carried lumber. Some attended group sessions. Gabriel found Martin near a storage shed. He was 63, broad-shouldered, and missing 2 fingers from his left hand. Gabriel expected gentleness. Martin looked at him and said, "You are blocking the road." Gabriel moved. "I came to speak with you." "Then speak. I need help." "With what?" Gabriel looked toward the other men. Privately, Martin lifted a bag of cement. "If your problem only exists in private, it is probably not the whole problem." He walked away. Gabriel followed. "I killed people." Martin did not stop. "How many?" Gabriel had never said the number aloud. 35. Martin placed the cement beside a wheelbarrow. "Accident?" "No." "War?" "No." "Were you convicted?" "No." "Are the police looking for you?" "I do not think so." Martin looked directly at him. "Then why are you here, instead of turning yourself in?" Gabriel's throat tightened. "I do not know. That is a lie." Gabriel felt anger rise. Martin waited. "I am afraid." "That is closer. I need to know whether there is any way back from what I did." Martin picked up another bag. "There is no way back." Gabriel stared at him. Martin continued walking. "You came here looking for someone to return you to the person you were before. I was not a good person before. You were still someone who had not killed 35 people. Gabriel said nothing. "That person is gone," Martin said. "So are they." The words struck harder than condemnation. Gabriel followed him into the workshop. "What am I supposed to do?" Martin pointed toward a stack of stones. "Move those to the north field." Gabriel looked outside. The field was several hundred yards away. "What for?" "We are building a foundation." "For what?" "A house." Gabriel waited for more. Martin gave none. "Will you help me?" Gabriel asked. "I just told you what to do." "I mean with what I did." Martin looked at the stones. "So do I." Gabriel began carrying them. The stones were irregular and heavy. Some required both arms. He loaded them into a wheelbarrow, pushed them across the property, unloaded them, and returned. He worked until dark. The following morning, Martin woke him before sunrise. Northfield. Gabriel returned to the stones. For 6 weeks, he built a foundation. Martin gave him measurements, but no plans for the rest of the structure. Gabriel dug trenches. He mixed mortar. He arranged stones. When the first wall reached his waist, Martin inspected it. "Wrong." Gabriel looked at the level. "It is straight. Take it down." "What is wrong with it?" "The house does not belong there. You told me to build it there." "Yes." Gabriel waited for an explanation. Martin walked away. Gabriel followed. "I spent 6 weeks on that wall." "I know. Why did you let me finish it?" "I wanted to see whether you would." Gabriel felt rage surge through him. "What does that mean?" "It means take it down." Gabriel refused. Martin assigned his meals to someone else and removed him from the dormitory. Gabriel slept in his truck. For 3 days, he watched other men work. No one asked why he had stopped. On the 4th morning, he began dismantling the wall. Martin required him to clean every stone and carry it back to the original pile. When the final stone was returned, Martin pointed toward a slope on the western side of the property. "Build it there." Gabriel laughed. Martin did not. "What shape?" "Round." "A round house?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you need to build it." Gabriel wanted to leave. He could drive away. No one knew his real name. No one could force him to stay. Then he imagined returning to the road. New jobs, new cities, the same 35 faces. He remained. The second structure took 4 months. Gabriel learned how to fit the stones into a curve. He learned how to correct pressure before a wall shifted. He learned to feel weaknesses with his hands. His palms split. His shoulders burned. His back began bleeding, where stones rubbed against him. Other residents received counseling. They attended meditation sessions. Martin taught them how to work with anger, addiction, and shame. Gabriel was not invited. When he asked, Martin gave him more stones. When the round structure was nearly complete, Martin inspected it. "Take it down!" Gabriel thought he had misheard. It is finished. No, you told me to build it. Yes, you said it needed to be round. It is. Then why? Martin touched one of the stones. Because it needs to come down. Gabriel struck him. The punch landed against Martin's jaw. Several men moved toward them. Martin raised one hand. They stopped. Gabriel stood with his fists closed. Martin wiped blood from his lip. Feel better? No. Then the punch failed. Gabriel's breathing became heavy. You are playing with me. Yes. The answer stunned him. You think this is punishment? No. What is it? Martin looked toward the round structure. You still believe effort creates a debt. Gabriel said nothing. You believe if you suffer enough, someone must eventually give you relief. I am asking for help. You are bargaining. I built everything you told me to build, and now you believe I owe you. You said you would help me. I never said that. Gabriel's face changed. Martin continued. You arrived with a transaction. You carry stones. I make you innocent. I know I cannot be innocent. Then why are you angry? Gabriel looked at the structure. Martin stepped closer. You still think there is a number of stones equal to 35 lives. That is not what I think. It is exactly what you think. Gabriel looked at his damaged hands. What do you want from me? Nothing. Then why am I here? You came. Martin walked away. Gabriel stood beside the round stone building. He hated Martin. He hated the center. He hated every man receiving instruction while he carried weight. He hated his mother. He hated Calvin. He hated the people at the wedding for being present when he had decided they represented something else. Most of all, he hated the part of himself that still wanted the suffering to produce a reward. That night, Gabriel began dismantling the building. The second pile was carried back stone by stone. Martin then instructed him to build a square tower near the eastern boundary. Gabriel did. It took 8 months. Martin rejected the first foundation. Gabriel rebuilt it. Martin changed the dimensions after the second level. Gabriel started again. He worked through cold mornings and summer heat. His hands hardened. His back developed permanent scars. New residents arrived and left. Men who had entered the center after Gabriel completed their programs before he was allowed into a single formal session. One of them, a former gang member named Louis, asked Martin to let Gabriel join the evening group. He has done enough, Louis said. Martin looked at him. Enough for what? To deserve teaching. Martin shook his head. That is Gabriel's disease. Do not help him feed it. Louis told Gabriel what Martin had said. Gabriel nearly left that night. Instead, he continued building. The square tower rose. Gabriel began to understand stone, not as material, as weight. Every stone had limits. Placed badly, it transferred pressure until a wall failed. Placed correctly, the same weight created stability. No stone became lighter. The structure changed because the burden was carried differently. Gabriel recognized the thought as a lesson. He immediately became suspicious. He did not want meaning. Meaning felt like another attempt to transform the dead into something useful. They had not died to teach him. Their deaths were not gifts. They were losses he had created. He returned to work. After nearly 3 years, the tower was finished. Gabriel stood before Martin. I am done. Martin walked around the structure. He inspected every wall. He entered and climbed the internal ladder. He returned several minutes later. Gabriel prepared himself. Martin said, "Take down the upper half." Gabriel closed his eyes. Why? The lower wall is carrying pressure incorrectly. It has not moved. It will. I can reinforce it. No. I can rebuild the lower section without removing everything. No. Gabriel's hands began shaking. Martin watched him. I cannot do this again. Yes. No, I cannot. Then do not. Gabriel looked toward the road. Martin turned away. Gabriel shouted after him. I killed 35 people. Every worker stopped. The words moved across the property. Some men already knew pieces of Gabriel's story. None had heard the number. Martin turned back. Gabriel's voice broke. I burned a wedding hall. Children died. My cousin died. His wife died. People who had nothing to do with my family died. No one moved. Gabriel pointed toward the tower. I have carried your stones for 3 years. I built your walls. I slept outside. I did everything you asked. Martin listened. Gabriel struck his own chest, and they are still here. His legs weakened. He lowered himself to the ground. I wake up with them. I eat with them. I hear them in every alarm. Nothing changed. Martin approached. Gabriel looked up. I cannot pay for it. No, I cannot fix it. No, I cannot bring them back. No, then tell me why you kept me here. Martin sat in front of him. Because until this moment, you believed you could. Gabriel stared at him. Martin touched the ground between them. You believed labor could purchase forgiveness. You believed pain could balance pain. You believed if I made you suffer enough, you could leave without carrying what you did. Gabriel began crying. Martin continued. You came here asking me to remove it. Yes, I cannot. Then there is nothing. There is what you have refused to do. What? Carry it without making it the center of the world. Gabriel's expression hardened. It is the center of my world. That is another form of selfishness. Gabriel recoiled. Martin's voice remained firm. 35 people died. And you have spent 3 years making their deaths entirely about your suffering. Gabriel looked as though he had been struck. You wake with their faces and ask what they mean about you. You work until your hands bleed and ask whether you have suffered enough. You imagine confession, prison, forgiveness, death, and every path ends with the same subject. Martin pointed toward him. You. Gabriel could not speak. Martin continued. Guilt can become vanity when a person worships their own unforgivability. Gabriel lowered his head. I do not know how to stop. I know. Martin moved closer. That is why the tower must come down. Gabriel looked at it. The wall is not the problem. No, the pressure is not wrong. No. Gabriel understood. The instructions had never been about buildings. The structures were every version of himself he tried to construct. The punished man, the obedient man, the man who suffered enough, the man who could someday deserve to live. Each structure placed him at the center. Each one had to fall. Gabriel bent forward until his forehead touched the ground. I do not know who I am without what I did. Martin placed a hand on his back. For the first time, that is true. Gabriel's body began shaking. 3 years of control left him. He cried until no words remained. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not promise to become good. He did not offer another bargain. He lay on the ground with nothing left to defend. Martin remained beside him. When Gabriel finally looked up, the workers had returned to their tasks. No one stared. No one applauded. The world had not stopped because Gabriel's structure collapsed. Martin stood and extended his hand. Gabriel hesitated before taking it. What happens now? He asked. Now you learn. That evening, Gabriel entered the meditation room for the first time. He sat with men he had watched receive teachings for years. Martin gave no special introduction. He did not announce that Gabriel was ready. He instructed everyone to feel the weight of the body against the floor. Gabriel closed his eyes. The faces appeared. Matthew, the bride, the children, the server, the musician. Gabriel did not push them away. He did not ask them to forgive him. He did not use them to punish himself. He allowed them to be dead. He allowed himself to be alive. Both truths remained. The practice was more difficult than carrying stones. Stones did not accuse him. Stones did not resemble children. Stones did not ask whether he had the right to continue breathing. Gabriel sat anyway. Martin taught him to see an action without turning it into an identity large enough to erase every other action. He taught him that responsibility did not require endless self-hatred. It required truth, consequence, and a willingness to stop creating new harm. Gabriel eventually confessed. He contacted an attorney and gave a complete account of the fire. The investigation reopened. Evidence was recovered from records, photographs, and materials Gabriel described. Maria denied knowing anything. Gabriel did not accuse her. Calvin faced separate charges for building violations and corruption. Gabriel accepted responsibility for the fire. He pleaded guilty to multiple counts of murder and arson. Families of the victims attended the hearing. Some demanded the maximum sentence. Some refused to look at him. Matthew's mother spoke for 20 minutes. She described her son. She described the woman he married. She described the phone call that divided her life into before and after. Gabriel listened. He did not lower his head to escape her. He did not ask for mercy. When the judge invited him to speak, Gabriel stood. I spent years believing my suffering was proof that I understood what I did. He looked toward the families. It was not. His voice shook. I cannot ask you to forgive me. I cannot tell you I am different and expect that to matter more than the people who are gone. He paused. I am telling the truth, because continuing to hide would be another act against them. Gabriel received a life sentence. Martin visited him in prison. At first, guards placed them across from each other behind glass. Later, they met in a monitored room. Martin continued teaching. Gabriel practiced in his cell. He worked in the prison laundry. He requested no special treatment. Other prisoners learned what he had done. Some called him a child killer. Some threatened him. One man attacked him in the dining hall. Gabriel defended himself enough to survive. He did not retaliate after the man fell. Years passed. Gabriel began leading a meditation group after the prison chaplain noticed men sitting outside his cell. They came because he did not speak like someone who had escaped his past. He never told them that everyone deserved forgiveness. He never promised transformation would remove consequences. He told them the truth. You may become someone different and still have to live inside what the former version of you created. A young prisoner named Kevin attended after stabbing another man during a robbery. Kevin could not sleep. He believed the victim's face appeared every night to punish him. What do I do when I see him? Kevin asked. Gabriel answered, Stop deciding why he is there. What does that mean? You keep making the image about you. He is in my mind. Yes. Then who else could it be about? The person you harmed. Kevin stared at him. Gabriel continued. Let him be more than your guilt. Ask who he was before you entered his life. Kevin looked away. That makes it worse. Yes. Then why would I do it? Because guilt wants relief. Responsibility wants truth. Kevin stopped attending for several weeks. Then he returned. Other men came. Some had killed. Some had abused their families. Some had destroyed their children's trust. Some had spent years protecting themselves with the belief that they were monsters. Being a monster required nothing. A monster did not need to apologize. A monster did not need to change. A monster simply acted according to its nature. Gabriel refused to let them hide there. You are a human being, he told them. That is worse and better. Men asked him what that meant. It means you are capable of what you did. He waited. And you are capable of what you do next. Gabriel began writing short reflections for the group. He had never considered himself educated. His sentences were plain. He wrote about anger inherited from parents. He wrote about shame disguised as repentance. He wrote about the difference between punishment and repair. He wrote about carrying what could not be changed without allowing it to poison every remaining action. The prison chaplain copied the pages. They circulated through other units. Then, other prisons. A restorative justice organization published a small collection titled The Weight of Stone. Gabriel did not receive money from it. He requested that proceeds support families affected by violent crime and improve fire safety in rural event halls. The collection reached Martin during the final year of his life. He visited Gabriel one last time. Martin had become thin. His left hand shook. Gabriel sat across from him. You look terrible, Gabriel said. Martin smiled. You finally learned honesty. They remained quiet. Then Gabriel asked, Did you know? Know what? That I would survive the towers. No. That I would confess. No. That I would practice. No. Gabriel looked at him. Then why did you keep telling me to build? Martin leaned back. Because building was the only thing you trusted, and tearing them down, you trusted destruction too. Gabriel almost laughed. Martin continued, I used the language you already knew. Gabriel looked at his hands. The scars remained. Did I need all those years? I do not know. You could have taught me sooner. I tried. When? The first day. Gabriel frowned. Martin repeated the first instruction. Move the stones. Gabriel remembered arriving. He had been waiting for a teaching hidden behind the labor. He had never considered that the labor was the teaching. Martin raised his hand against the glass. Gabriel placed his own hand opposite it. I am dying, Martin said. Gabriel closed his eyes. When? Soon. Are you afraid? Yes. The answer comforted Gabriel. Not because Martin was afraid, because he did not pretend not to be. What should I do? Gabriel asked. Martin lowered his hand. Continue. With the group. With the next thing. That is all? That has always been all. Martin died 3 months later. Gabriel received the news after breakfast. He returned to his cell. He sat on the floor. For hours, he allowed the grief to move without turning it into a demand. He did not ask why Martin had left him. He did not make the death another punishment. He remembered the stones. He remembered the punch. He remembered the hand on his back when he had finally collapsed. That evening, Gabriel led the group. Kevin noticed his face. You do not have to do this tonight. Yes, I do. Why? Gabriel placed both hands on his knees. Because this is the next thing. The men became quiet. Gabriel instructed them to feel the weight of their bodies against the floor. He instructed them to notice whatever appeared. No bargaining, no running, no building a better person to escape the one sitting there. The room settled. Gabriel closed his eyes. 35 faces appeared. Martin appeared among them. Gabriel did not place them in the same category. He did not use one loss to explain another. He allowed each person to remain exactly who they had been. The dead were still dead. The sentence remained. The prison doors remained locked. Gabriel breathed. Around him, men who had once believed they were beyond every path sat without moving. He had entered prison as the worst thing he had ever done. Years later, he was still carrying it, but it was no longer the only thing his hands knew how to hold.